Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the ad hoc Site Evaluation Committee. We are waiting for a few more members to arrive that are on their way, but why don't we go ahead and start with roll call, please?
Chair Karen Askey,
Present?
Vice Chair Mary Hefty, absent. Committee Member Ronnie Krasinski,
Here.
Committee Member Carter War, absent. Committee Member Nona Chiarello,
Here.
Committee Member Jocelyn Gray, absent. Committee Member Karen Batra, here. 4 of the 7 committee members are present. 3 are absent at this time. This concludes roll call.
Thank you, Emily. And when the members come, will we indicate that they're here? Patty, is that something we do in the minutes or? How should we indicate it? Because I think they are coming.
Oh, I'll just include him in the minute.
Okay, all right. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. So let's begin. First of all, I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday and Happy New Year. We will start with oral communications for items that are not on the agenda. Does anybody in the schoolhouse have any items that they'd like to speak about? Okay. Do we have anybody online?
No hands are currently raised at this time.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3, the approval of the minutes. So we have 2 sets of minutes tonight. We have the ones from our very first meeting of November 19th. And we also have the minutes from our meeting of December 17th. So would anyone like to, I guess I should ask if there are any comments from the public first on this. Do we do that?
I think usually we do.
Okay.
Committee and then the.
Okay, so
You
let's-
do public comment before.
Okay, so let's start with public comments. I mean, excuse me, committee member comments.
There's several errors in the automatically generated one. On page 5, I'll read what my notes are. On page 5, page 3 of the minutes, the wrong person is referred in reference to vice chair.
Wait, Karen, can you speak up a little bit? I don't think that you're, thank you.
On page 5, which is the page 5 of the whole thing, page 3 of the minutes, the references to Nona, and they really should have been references to Mary Hefty. I thought that was a pretty important one. And then also subsequently motion by Vice Chair Flynn. I don't think she's on the committee. I don't know who made that motion. I didn't check that. Yeah, it's on the same
Page
page.
3?
Page 5, which is page 5 of the packet and page 3 of the minutes.
Okay. How do we, given that these were done by the consultant, or do we just give you the information, Emily?
Yes, you can give me the information on where you see corrections that need to be made. I'll make those corrections. We'll have a final look through, just as Chair Askey, and then they'll be ready to post.
Okay, thank you.
I have 3 more.
Yeah. Keep going.
On page 7 of the packet, which is page 5 of the notes, there's a strange just quote. She stated that, and I suggest
Yeah.
just completely delete that. On page 9 of the packet, page 7 of the notes, our names are just listed on the top arbitrarily. It just looks really strange. There's no context to why that's there. And also the word interest, which really should be replaced with the words conflict of interest in reference to, I was talking about, maybe I shouldn't be on the Alpine committee because I live closer to Alpine. They're all pretty innocuous, but I think they're kind of important because, especially the one about the vice chair.
Yeah. since we're on that same page, which is page 7 of the minutes, I thought that the material after the two paragraphs, which are single sentences afterward, were very confusing, and I don't think they're relevant because at the bottom, we show who's on which subcommittees. And I thought maybe those could be deleted as well. You see what I'm talking? It says, committee member Breen said she would do Alpine with committee member Vatra if that creates a group and push, which I don't actually recall, and Chair Askey noted that she and committee members Vatra and Chiarella would take Portola. Committee members Breen, Krasinski, and Gray would take Alpine. I just think that stuff should be deleted. It's not relevant. Okay. Any other comments on the minutes?
So also on that page, the second sentence under item F has Christchurch as one word. It should be two.
Anybody else? Let's make sure. Okay, this is on, so Mary, that we're on the minutes from the first meeting, November 19th.
Apologies are not good enough for it being late. And actually, I think I made it through the whole first set of minutes without, sorry.
Just to clarify, you do not have comments on the November 19th minutes. Okay, any other comments on the November 19th minutes? All right, any comments from the public on the minutes from November 19th, 2024?
No hands are raised on Zoom.
Okay, great. Should we do a motion to approve as amended or wait for both? Well, let's just do it one at a time. So do I have a motion to approve as with the amendments mentioned?
I move that the minutes be approved as amended.
Second?
I second.
Okay. Yeah.
Chair Karen Askey.
Approved.
Ap-
Aye.
Sorry. Vice Chair Mary Hefty.
All right,
Thank you. Committee member Ronnie Krasinski.
Yes.
Committee member Carter Ward.
I abstain. I wasn't there.
Okay. Committee member Nona Chiarella.
Aye.
Committee member Jocelyn Gray. Committee member Karen Batra.
Yep.
1 abstain, 6 ayes.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to the minutes from Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. Do we have any comments on those minutes? Mary, I think you mentioned you might have a comment.
yep, I'm looking at it. Here we go. First of all, I thought we should get a, and this may not be a correction to the minute.
Excuse me, Mary, can you speak into the microphone more?
This
Thank
may
you.
not be a correction of the minutes, but I thought Dorothy Ford Park should be referred to as Dorothy Ford Open Space. And whether we correct that now or later, or just remember to try and do it in the future, I just wanted to comment on it. And then I thought that there were a couple of maybe overstatements that I thought we could just delete from the minutes. And they're in that same paragraph about 3350 Alpine that we could delete. We need to look at the possibility of applying AB 721. I think that's not really in our purview. as a committee, and it doesn't have to do with us. I would delete that line. We just, however, AB 721 may allow affordable housing development, even if there are CC&I restrictions. Because I don't think in our purview is applying an assembly bill.
Are you, or do you mind if I ask a question?
Let me just finish and then, because I think these were all put out as thoughts. I also thought that we could possibly delete, or at least somebody should explain to me, if church builds more affordable units, could 3350 be for the 6 above moderate income, no net loss? I didn't understand that sentence at all.
Sure, I was the one that mentioned that when we were talking about 3350 Alpine. Nona and Ronnie had some options that they threw out. And right now in our housing element, Christ Church is slated for 6 above moderate or AMI.
Ladera Church.
Christ Church
6.
is slated for 6 AMI units. They have indicated they want to do low-income units. Therefore, we as a town would need to make up the 6 AMI units. So I threw out the idea that perhaps that lot could be used to make up for the above moderate income units.
Okay, I understand it now. And I don't know that it needs to be, unless you wanted to correct it so that we understood it referred to Christ Church. The loss of the 6 units at
Yes,
Christ
we can
Church.
add, let's add if Christ Church.
At Christ Church. Yeah, that would be
Yes.
great. Make it more understandable to the general public.
Yeah. Good catch.
And I think that may be all. Ronnie?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Joe?
were
Good
were the suggestions that you're making correcting what was actually said during the meeting? I mean, are you saying that the minutes don't reflect what was said during the meeting, or you just don't agree with what was said during?
No, I think that it's a misuse. I don't remember the word applying, the possibility of applying, and I don't, was that the intention of the statement? And whose statement was it in that case?
It was my statement. Your objection is to the word applying, or?
Yes.
possibility?
How we need to look at the possibility of applying. That seems like
Okay, I
an
think we could
overstatement.
maybe change that to, we need to look at the relevance of
Relevance.
instead of possibility of applying. Okay,
Yeah.
sure. And then the Dorothy Ford Park, I mean, we did refer to it as that during the meeting and in our materials. And like our housing element, I think generally uses Dorothy Ford Park and open space.
And open space.
Yeah. But so I guess I don't necessarily think we should change the minutes, since I think.
Yeah,
we
it
called
stands
that. Yeah.
as what it, I don't remember whether we said open space or. I didn't listen.
It's kind of a mouthful to say the whole thing.
Yeah, and in the housing element, it does refer to it as Dorothy Ford Park and open space, and we can put that in going forward. DFPOS. Any other comments to the minutes on December 17th? All right, motion to approve?
Public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Ronnie. Any public comments on the minutes from December 17th?
There are no hands raised online.
Okay. Motion to approve minutes as amended.
One hand,
Apologies.
just one.
Oh,
One hand popped up.
Peter
Peter.
Lippman here. Many of us consider the entire tract of Ford Field and the open space as Dorothy Ford Park. Indeed, the plaque identifying it as Dorothy Ford Park is in the open space portion. And I'd suggest that you clarify whether you just mean the open space portion of Dorothy Ford Park or the whole park, including Ford Field. Thank you.
That concludes public comments.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Are we comfortable with the minutes stating Dorothy Ford Park for this round of minutes? Okay,
I think it should reflect what we said at the time.
okay,
On whatever subject, whether it was correct or not.
okay. And moving forward, we will refer to that section as the open space portion of Dorothy Ford Park, or yeah, the open space version. Okay,
I guess I'd say we could just try to be consistent with our housing element, which maybe we could double check what that says.
okay. Okay, motion to approve the December 17th minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second. I'm seconding.
Wonderful. Chair Karen Askey,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mary Hafty. Committee Member Ronnie Krasinski,
Yes.
Committee Member Carter Ward,
Yes.
Committee Member Nona Chiarello,
Aye.
Committee Member Jocelyn Gray, Committee Member Karen Batra. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Emily. And also, I just want to give a shout out to Patty Dews and for taking these minutes and making them as detailed as they are. I think it's incredibly helpful for everybody, whether it's the committee or the public. So thank you very much. All right, moving on to item 4, committee discussion. We will do the site updates. And first of all, my apologies to the newly formed name, or I should say the new name of Alpine Portola Corners, which is first on the list, but I did not update the name in my agenda or our agenda. So I will do that for the next time. So Alpine Portola Corners, do you have any updates you'd like to share? And also, may I refer everybody in the agenda package is a master list that we've been compiling. And we'll continue to update this. And Karen Batra, thank you, is going to be the central record keeper of this list. So we just have one person entering data on the list so that we make sure that it stays consistent. So we can work from this list, or if the subcommittee has something else they want to work from, that's fine.
We've all included. I have one update. I know on the Sequoia's line, Karen, on your sheet, and maybe we can coordinate because I've been keeping the sheet for us and I'll coordinate with you. On the Sequoia's, oh, thank you. This is better. Sorry. I did contact the CEO and the president of Sequoia's, and she said that at this time they weren't interested in adding more to what they've already committed to, but that in the future they would like to continue discussions with the town to add additional units. But not at this time.
Would they be willing to have a more robust conversation about it with the
Not
group?
for this round. Not for this round.
Thanks for doing that, Jocelyn. Quick question for you. The Sequoia's has a large amount of property. Were you able to get any information about where they are planning to build?
No, and I didn't ask.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Is there traction on any other site for the subcommittee?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I will report on my conversation with the Jellick family. I spoke with, 4 branches of the Jellick family. And they own multiple lots, in town and, on the corner. And their interest is in pure commercial. The 4 families are widespread across the country and depend on the income that they receive from those businesses. And because there are 4 different governing families at least, they need to keep it as simple as possible. And changes would be extremely uncomfortable for them. I also spoke with their lawyer, called me, who said they wanted no change. So it was a good, but it was a very good conversation, I would have to say.
And then, Mary, you also talked to the Pollock Financial Group people?
In the past, I've spoken with them.
Okay. And it was still showing up here, for me to do outreach on the AP corner. And they indicated that they were not interested as well.
You've talked to them again?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was who?
The Pollocks.
Oh,
who own-
Pollocks.
The Pollocks own the
Well,
other businesses.
The Pollocks own, the building at 130 Portola Road, and have and they're the limited liability managing partner, on 150 Portola Road, and they also expressed no interest. Both.
There's also within that area, there is the parking lot behind Roberts, which was assessed during the most recent housing element. Since then, George Roberts has passed. So I don't know if we consider that a material change in anything, but I don't know if you guys have reached out to the new owners and get,
My list.
okay, so
And
that's,
it slipped to the bottom of my list,
That-
so I'm willing to do that unless you would rather, Carter. Christine?
I'll be happy to talk to Christine.
Okay, that would be great. Although I'd be.
It's the property behind Roberts Market, that the Roberts, the previous ones were 130 and 150 Portola Road.
Carter, I'd be glad to talk with you if there's any chance I could do that, if that works.
Yeah, happy to coordinate.
Thank you.
I also thought there was a property along Portola Road because our subcommittee goes to the it goes to the Jellic border. And I think there were some properties in between Jellic and Alpine that were being looked at.
I don't know that, I've had any involvement in that review. The majority of the potential opportunities there, would be, part of the Priory School. The remaining properties along that border are all single-family residential, at this point.
Okay.
It goes past the Neelys.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
All right, I'll have to do better with that statement.
Oh,
Oh,
you know what, can I back up, Mary, while you, hang on, just back to your comment on the Priory. Is it worth going back to them to see what their plan is and if there's any interest in student housing, which is treated differently than, I think it is treated differently than other types of housing units and things like that? I don't know if it's worth going back or not, but I'm going to we got to ask the questions. This is what we're here for.
I think I'd have to recuse myself on this since I'm on the board of trustees for the Priory.
Okay.
I'm certainly willing to keep the communication lines open. I've met with the headmaster a couple of times, but I haven't asked him that question, so I can ask him that question. Oh, the 550, 555 Hotel Road. Any new developments on that?
None from my point of view. There really hasn't been much time between our December 17th meeting and this meeting, you know, considering
Right.
the holidays have occupied most of that time.
That's right.
So is it worth putting in a phone call to that property? I mean, are we saying that we still have some work to do?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we need to know is, do we still have work to do? All right,
Yes,
great.
You still have work to do. I do have a call in to the family.
F555.
Okay. Are there other?
They're out of town. They're out of town.
Okay. I know we have this master list that started with the 26 that the town council subcommittee identified. And we've added a couple from the Portola side onto the bottom of the list. Mary, do you know of other properties since this list was created that might be put on here? Are there any new properties?
Just going through this. We haven't pursued the Thessing offices further. It's one that we haven't, but maybe you have it.
For full disclosure, I'm the architect for the Thiesing project, and the subdivision of that property is on the planning commission agenda for this Wednesday, separating 1 acre, you know, for the purposes of housing. So the tennis court site, you know, is being split from the office site in the front.
So I mean, they're already in our housing element, Mary, so what is the thought process about?
He knows more about it than I do. What's the thought process on that?
No, well,
The thought process, you know, was that it was on the housing element, you know, as intended, you know, for housing. And the subdivision, you know, provides for their family plans, which retains the 1.5 acres in the front along Alpine Road for offices, you know, which are important, you know, to their family income. And it relieves the tennis court property, which is derelict, and you know, so that it could be, you know, separated and sold, you know, for housing.
yeah, I get that. I guess that's already like part of our housing element. So I guess I was trying to
How many
understand
units?
what the relevance was
It's-
for our committee here.
It's recently, you know, been rezoned as of June, you know, for MU.
Right.
You know, and
MU?
Wait,
MU 36. So it has, you know, a maximum density of 6 units per acre, you know, plus the density ones.
And it is
I
on
still
our
don't
list.
understand. There was the idea that we could add more units there, and that's the relevance for our committee.
How many is on the?
right now in our housing element, that property is slated for 9 AMI units.
And that is on the list as number 11.
Okay.
Um, are there other ones that are not on this list?
Not that I know of. Oh, we talked about Romney,
Okay,
115.
115, what?
Oh, nothing for discussion.
okay. Okay, so are there other, let me ask this a different way. There may not be anything to discuss, but are there other plans for discussions with some other properties in that vicinity to outreach or not from your subcommittee?
I don't think our subcommittee has any other properties that, to discuss tonight.
We need to meet.
Okay. Might there be properties in the future? Or,
Always.
okay. Thank you.
That's what I thought.
Okay. Should we move on to Alpine Los Trancos skyline? And then we'll take questions from the committee and then we'll open it up for public comments after that. Which
On
is,
this one?
well,
Or
we
you're gonna
have
go
been,
through
we
all
have,
three and then
I'm
pick one?
sorry. Okay, let me do this. Are there any more questions for the Alpine Portola Corners Subcommittee? No. So what I would recommend is we move to the subcommittee for the Alpine Los Trancos skyline and then have committee questions. And then we'll move to the next subcommittee, have committee questions, and then open it up for public comments on all three. Okay.
And are we having a discussion while we're asking questions or?
After public comments, we will have a discussion. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Alpine Los Trancos skyline.
Is everyone looking at me again? God, sorry. Well, we've had a very busy time on, we've spent, there's been an inordinate amount of time spent on this. And a very busy holiday season for Nona and I, many cups of tea. We've had a couple of successful meetings. We had a very successful meeting, and I'll start with the good news always, with the Fogarty, three of the siblings at Alice's. I'm advertising now. They there is a major transition happening there. There's lots of possibilities for them. We looked at the 15 acres that are directly adjacent to the Windy Hill MROSD properties and on Skyline with access from Skyline. We have a number of ideas, which I hope Nona will help guide me through. Terrence was very excited. There no zoning changes needed, depending on how we structure it. And it's basically a ready to go possible situation that I think there is room to bring it forward to the council for direction. So that's probably the biggest news. Nona, do you want to add anything to that? Or subtract anything?
I can add that we had a pretty thorough discussion of the Williamson Act in relation to that property. And we need to do more, they need to do more looking into the status of their Williamson contract in order for us to know which possibilities really exist in terms of farm worker housing. But they are interested in moving on the property as a whole or some part of it, and they're really supportive of what the town is trying to do and want to be helpful as long as it helps them too. I think is the fairest way to put that. So there are some unknowns. One thing we learned is that they don't need housing for workers on their property. And so this would be mainly to serve other properties or other businesses. And so we have to look at that in relation to the Williamson Act as well. But there's several unknowns, but it was a great meeting, and they were just super supportive, I thought.
Was there?
And
oh,
sorry, just to mention that there was some nice interactions between open space access and open space usage, and getting the housing element satisfied at the same time. So it seemed like a very exciting possibility.
Yeah, the other thing that came out, so for our last meeting here, we had done basically a filtering analysis to see to what extent all of the Fogarty Winery parcels passed through the housing element filters that had been applied previously. So, flood risk, earthquake, steep slopes, unstable soils, all of that. And I think the parcel that seems of greatest interest to this committee is basically the northwest parcel along Skyline, which has about 3 to 4 acres that passes through all of the filters that had been applied previously. The one filter that's a little fuzzy in all of this is wildfire risk because of the map that was used for filtering. But one of the Fogarty brothers is basically spending all of his time doing mastication on their land. And even from the road, even from Skyline, it looks pretty impressive. So they've also invited us back to actually get a tour to see what the options might be. So exciting, but still some unknowns.
Did you talk about the number of units at all?
I think that isn't really their concern. And nor is it was it high on our list? Questions?
Yeah, and
That's
Terrence
what I
was,
would want to ask
yeah.
as well. So there's no discussion about number of units? We have no indication.
I
from
think
them that
the
they-
question would be that somebody else would do this and figure out the finances and do the money and put up the houses. Fogarty doesn't want to do the houses.
They don't,
They don't want to be in charge of the housing. They don't have the scope for that.
So it sounds like the interest is selling the parcel or part of the parcel
Exactly.
to us. And the one you're
Or
referring
it doesn't matter to whom, but at any rate, yeah.
to is the 8001020.
yes,
Okay. My other question is, I don't think they have sewer up there. Is that correct?
that's
That's correct.
correct.
Okay. And it is, maybe Carter might be able to answer this question. Is it possible to do septic? If you have a large enough leach field even for 50 units?
So Terrence was at our lunch too. It's important to emphasize, and he was really helpful in terms of answering a lot of questions about what the timetable would be on a property like that.
well, we mentioned-
The answers were pretty fast,
Ta-
except basically staff time.
You know what, Terrence is attending the meeting via Zoom. So Terrence, if you want to talk about answer the questions out here and your impressions of the meeting and maybe talk about farm worker housing, because I don't think that's been explored. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that might be somewhat of a new concept for us to look at.
Sure, although you covered the meeting and the very well. Our zoning code allows farm worker housing on the parcels in the Fogarty Winery area. So it's a relatively straightforward process to identify a project and move forward. You don't have to go through a zoning change to make that happen. But I agree with the characterization. It was a positive meeting. I liked your statement that they're interested in helping the community as long as it helps them too.
And in terms of the timeline, I think that was one of the questions that we were asking. What, from your experience and perspective, what sort of timeline would we be looking at?
Well, it's likely we would want to use an RFP process to try to find a developer. As you indicated, they're not interested in doing the development. But we could start working once we sort of narrow down that they're willing to consider it. We could start working on an RFP process to find a developer and get things going. Really, as soon as the town council told us this is the direction they wanted to go in.
Can I ask a question? Would the Williamson Act stuff still apply if they sold the parcel?
Yes, even within the Williamson Act, you can do farm worker housing, and you can sell the property. The only caveat is if you sell the property to someone who develops farm worker housing, if they were to demolish the housing, they actually have to resubmit the property back to the underlying property owner. But that's a detail.
So Terrence, is it correct to say that the Williamson Act contract stays with the land, not with the owner?
Correct. But as indicated, there are some questions we need to resolve with the Williamson Act, particularly in regards to the fact that the Fogarty Winery doesn't need the housing for its property. So we need to investigate whether or not you can do farm worker housing that serves properties within a certain radius, or whether it has to be they have to be workers on the property in question. I'm not sure about that. We have to do some research.
I just had a question on, when I think of farm workers in San Mateo County, I'm thinking mostly Half Moon Bay. Are there really a lot of farm workers along Skyline?
There are multiple vineyards and there are multiple agrarian activity. There's much agrarian activity, but I'm actually hoping that it could be, the people would be sensible enough to realize that there's also restaurant workers. There's a lot of people who need rentals that work on Skyline.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but that might be a violation of the Williamson Act if we.
That's what
make
we
it
need to find out.
Yeah.
That's all beyond the scope of our committee. I wanted to ask whether all that wouldn't come out in the RFP requests. All of a sudden with RFPs, Terrence, wouldn't we get a lot more information about that kind of thing?
Absolutely, we would. However, it's worth trying to research as much as we can prior to the RFP. But yes, that will be fleshed out in the RFP process.
Is there something about the Williamson Act or this property that limits it to only being able to develop farm worker housing? Or why would we not be considering other options there that are not farm worker housing?
Sure, if it's another type of housing that's not farm worker housing, okay, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, this gets a few hypotheticals because there's some things we don't know. If it's in the Williamson Act, which we're not positive that the entire property is within the Williamson Act, they've lost track of the contracts. They're looking for those, the owners are. But if it's in the Williamson Act, then the only way you can build anything other than farm worker housing, it would be to roll out of the Williamson Act, which is a fairly long and expensive process.
I see.
But we still don't know whether the Williams, anyway, there's a lot of unknowns.
Yes. We don't know that it's in the Williamson Act, but if it is, really the only thing feasible in the time frame we're looking for is farm worker housing.
How does one determine if it's in the Williamson Act?
Or I did a little bit of looking at that. It may not be accurate, but some of the parcels have much higher um basis than the others. And I was assuming that the ones with super low amounts were in the Williamson. I mean, it was like $300 a year. It was clear that that one was the Williamson Act, but so that might be an easy way to check at the parcel and you can.
Okay, that
it's
would
in
be
the
great.
Williamson.
But the definitive way is for the property owner to find the contract. That'll,
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. But that was just a shortcut if you wanted.
and their lawyer, they're between lawyers. So they're trying to find, they're trying to get in contact with, to find those documents. That'll give us a definitive answer. We can also work with the county, but it's much easier if the property owner can find those contracts, which they acknowledge they'd like to know where they are anyway.
Yeah.
Terrence, when you talked about that, this is something that we might want to put forward to the council when we get a little bit more information. How are we to get that information if we don't? Is this something where we have to ask the council for some staff and some, what is the process to getting the correct information that we need to move forward on it?
I think that comes after we present it to the council. But that being said, yeah, you can, Terrence, please feel free to answer. I think we've actually got some resources. It's about to come forward. The information is coming forward this, within the next couple of weeks with the Fogartys.
I think it's fair to say that the Fogartys are actually really anxious to resolve the future of their property as a whole. And so it's not just this that is inspiring them to check on the status of their Williamson Act. Because
Yes,
it's going to affect a lot of decisions that they have in the near term.
I certainly got that impression.
So we don't need.
Okay, so we're comfortable with the committee the way it is and the resources that we have that we can get those answers. Okay,
Exactly.
good. All right.
No, yeah, exactly. We need to do some research, phone calls, but ideally, I think we give the Fogartys time to find those contracts, and then that'll answer a lot of our questions.
Okay, great. Anything else from the Alpine?
Yeah. We have a fair amount of things.
Yeah, I mean, should I talk about 3350 now, Alpine?
Sure.
Okay, all right. This is a slightly longer update, partly because I really took to heart the proposal from Ronnie and Karen Batra that our job here is to look at alternative sites against a list of criteria, the last of which is whether or not a site is actually better than Dorothy Ford Park. I'm happy to call it something else, but for the purposes of tonight, since it was written that way in the document, I'm going to use that. Mary and I met with the owner of the property across from Dorothy Ford Park, which is 3350, on Saturday. And so I have a sort of detailed update on it. It's the perfect property for asking the question, how does this compare to Dorothy Ford Park? Partly because it is across the street from it, and partly because Martin Miller volunteered to his property basically to the housing element many months ago, almost many years ago now. So let me just walk through a set of 5 slides about this parcel. So I wanted to start with the housing element feasibility study for Dorothy Ford Park, and that's what's shown on this first image. What you can see is a 1.4 acre area that is actually in the proposed development. On the north side, it's bounded by the 30-foot wide easement to the bridge to nowhere. On the east, it's bounded by a green line, which is the setback from the parcel boundary on the east. On the south, it's bounded by the baseball field. And on the west, it's bounded by a green line, which is the 75-foot setback on the scenic corridor from the Alpine Road right of way. I'm going to show 4 slides, and they are all using this same view. The property lines will change from yellow to white, but otherwise you're looking at the same area. Okay, so this is an aerial view showing that same area with Dorothy Ford Park and 3350 Alpine Road on the other side. And basically what I wanted to do is just go through a list of the pluses and minuses comparing the 2 parcels. So 3350 is 2.9 acres. That's a plus because it's larger than Dorothy Ford Park's proposed development. A neutral is that it has the same scenic corridor setback of 75 feet. It's privately owned, which in some sense is a plus because of the timeline for development is more flexible then. Minus is that it has a residence, which is owner occupied. Martin Miller wants to stay in his house for on the order of 5 more years. And a plus is that it has a sewer connection already, although that likely wouldn't be enough for a high density housing project. Okay, next slide. In this slide, I asked the question, what happens if you try and put the development that is on Dorothy Ford Park onto 3350? And so what I did is I took the actual structures, duplicated them on this aerial photo on Dorothy Ford Park, and then kind of rearranged them to fit them in on 3350. And so the main thing that you can take away from this slide is that 3350 has a longer frontage on Alpine Road, and that could simplify access by reducing the amount of pavement that you need for the driveway to accommodate the same amount of parking. What these 2 images here don't show is the single most important fact about Dorothy Ford Park, and that is the creek and the terrain associated with it. And so that's what's shown in the next slide. This is what's called a hillshade layer in the GIS. It is basically bare earth terrain with the vegetation and buildings taken out. And it shows the same housing arrangement as you saw before. Looking over at the left, you can see that if the housing were all arranged sort of in a line like that, it could be basically at the bottom of the hill along Alpine Road. And so it would be more or less out of sight from all of the uphill properties. There would still be neighborhood opposition, most likely. So that's a mix, a plus and a minus there both. What really stands out on this image, though, is the channel of Los Trancos Creek on the east side of Dorothy Ford Park. Remember, the creek is the boundary between San Mateo County and Santa Clara County. And as you can see here, it is deeply incised. It is very meandering, and it doesn't align with the parcel boundary, which was used as the baseline for the setback in the feasibility analysis. What you can see, go back, thanks. In the feasibility analysis, which is that green line on the right that's sort of an arc, you can see that it's actually in the creek, as is some of the parking and the playground areas. To understand more fully what the creek setback means on this parcel, the next slide, I've added that in. So just as the counties provide the LiDAR and hillshade data for the GIS, they also delineate the top of bank. And that's shown here as a dashed black and white line. And that's important because the creek setback in the municipal code is 55 feet from the top of bank for a parcel of 2.5 acres or more, or alternatively 60 feet from the ordinary high water mark But those are essentially the same on a parcel like this, where the creek is deeply incised because the high water mark and the top of bank basically align vertically. So taking that top of bank line, the black and white dashed line, you can use the GIS to generate a 55-foot buffer to create the setback. And that's what's represented by the dashed green and black line. What that means is that 3 of the 4 structures that were put into the conceptual plan intrude on the setback of the creek. So a couple of takeaways from this analysis. First, I think it's fair to say that 3350 Alpine Road is a better site to build on based on the pluses and minuses because it's not subject to the 55-foot creek setback and it's not vulnerable to bank erosion and shifts in Los Trancos Creek. That's not to say it's a perfect solution or even a great solution. Martin Miller, when we met with him, said that he was willing to rezone to 20 units per acre, but that's not going to go down easily in this town, and I think we all know that. The second take home really concerns Dorothy Ford Park itself, in my mind. I think that people could say, well, maybe you could make the setback smaller. But the trend in thinking is to actually make creek setbacks bigger, if anything. And in my mind, at least, it would be very short-sighted to develop on Dorothy Ford Park using this analysis, especially given a creek that is meanders so much, and especially given how dynamic it is and will continue to be in a changing climate. You only have to go to Ladera Shopping Center and walk across the street to know that Los Trancos Creek has moved. And it was very expensive to do creek stabilization across from Ladera Shopping Center. And there are other places where the creek has actually eroded beneath the road right-of-way in that area. So thinking that this creek is not going to move and that you can build up to that setback, I think is putting at risk not only 2 magnificent trees, but people and property that would be involved in these housing units. Okay, so that's where we are on this. I hope that this explains why I think it's really important for every time we look at a parcel and say, is this an alternative or is it not? We really think about what we're up against when we try and do a real alternative to Dorothy Ford Park and what the consequences are if we don't. So, any questions?
The yellow section is,
Oh, so the broad yellow band, that's just the road right-of-way setback. Yeah, both. It just goes to that green line. And
You
I
just have it.
apologize, that this isn't more polished. The meeting was on Saturday and I did this yesterday, so I didn't quite polish it as much as I would have liked, but it was actually worth it to me to do this, to actually check the footprints of those buildings, to see where we really are in thinking about getting 50 units on a single parcel.
this might be a comment, and I apologize, but in speaking to my contact in the development world, we won't be, I appreciate this very much, but I think all the sites, we have to think about them as one giant building, unfortunately. And I don't know if that, I don't know if it's still possible. I'm not negating what you put here at all. And did you consider the financial impact to the town in terms of buying Mr. Martin's property and potential litigation? I would see that as a negative. I'm not,
I think those would definitely be negatives. And I don't know what their magnitude would
I
be.
know, and I don't
So
think that's
for
really
sure.
That's not
Yeah,
our business.
I think
I
that,
think that just needs to be on the list.
absolutely.
My understanding of what our charge is here is to really review every single site we possibly can, come up with our evaluations and give them to the council. And the council will be the ultimate decision maker on what they want to move forward with.
But
So,
I'm going to consider financial impact in the big picture, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that's just something it's not our decision,
Yeah.
but that's still something that's going to play. an impact.
absolutely. And I realize this is very contentious and people need to realize we are exploring. We are not making decisions, but we are exploring our options. I just want to point that out. Another thing, well, I'm getting into this discussion, so.
So we're not going to do discussion. There are
No.
more items. in this.
Yeah. So this has been great. Are there more questions for Nona on this analysis of 3350?
Yeah, the Martin Miller spoke in one of the previous meetings and had comments sort of against density. But you met with him and so you said that is he supportive of a plan?
He
like
is
this?
on the line. He's at the meeting.
Oh, okay,
He's in attendance.
okay.
So I
Is he
just,
on?
My question was, from your meeting with him, is your impression that he's supportive of a plan like this?
He said he was willing to do 20 units per acre, but I'm hoping we invited him to the meeting, so maybe he's online.
but I suggest we
Okay.
save that for public comment till we get through all these things.
Okay. And again, I think I hope I said, he wants to stay in that residence for at least another 5 years. So that's another thing to think about. Whenever we have a parcel that has an owner occupied residence, it's going to be complicated like that.
But no discussion, right?
We did have
Right.
another kind of, I'm interrupting you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have another question. Related to that, you listed privately owned as a plus, and I'm just, you listed privately owned as a positive, and I just wanted to understand the thinking there. Whereas previously having the town-owned site was viewed as a plus because the town has control and we could, have a fully affordable project. Well, and it sounds like the concept anyways is the town would need to purchase property.
I don't know if the town
That's
would
not
need
it.
to purchase the property. I think the sense in which private ownership might be a plus is basically a comment that Terrence made, and maybe he can expand on this, that basically the clock doesn't tick as fast on a private parcel as it does on a town-owned parcel. Terrence, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. Actually, given that we're trying to replace a project that's on a particular time frame, so that's generally true. The state's going to expect you to move faster on a publicly owned project because you're in control. Whereas if it's privately owned, it's going to move at whatever pace the market and the property owners want. So there's a little more pressure on the town to perform if it's already owned by the town. But since we're trying to replace a project on a certain schedule, we actually are going to feel pressure to find a similar project that has a similar schedule. So in this case, I don't think it necessarily, it's not a disadvantage, but it's not necessarily an advantage that it's privately held.
Terrence, I know that we are held to task by HCD for our programs, that we need to complete our programs. So for instance, issuing an RFP by January of 2026 is one of our deadlines. What is the penalty to the town if a privately owned piece of property doesn't get developed? What happens? What's the penalty to the town?
There is no penalty so long as we didn't do anything to impede it.
Well, there
Okay.
may be penalties if we don't hit our RENA numbers, correct?
What, are there penalties if we don't hit our RENA numbers?
No, no, not directly. As long as we didn't do anything to impede it, and if the market didn't develop as long as we identified the sites, zoned the sites, and did everything we were supposed to do, there's no actual penalty if we don't actually produce the units on private property. If we don't, that assumes, of course, that we do all of our programs, and we do all the things we say we're going to do. If we don't, then we are subject to penalty. But we are not actually required to develop any certain number of units. We're required to accommodate and facilitate, to the extent that we can, the RENA allocation.
Okay.
I
But-
think we can close that presentation.
But
Oh,
just what the task in front of us here is to try to find a replacement site, or there's a number of tasks that you're looking at, but the most critical task is to find a replacement site for that project. If we were not to, since the town owns that property, if we were not to pursue the schedule that is laid out in the housing element, then there would be penalties.
okay, thank you. Nona, I just want to ask if we should let Mr. Miller, if we should let him speak now. I think it's more relevant if he's able to speak now than wait to go through that. Is that okay with the committee?
Yeah, fine
Okay.
with me.
All
I
right.
mean, we're
Mr.
not
Miller.
Advocating for this property. We're really just trying to assess.
Yeah,
it.
good evening.
And that's a part of the assessment.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Miller. Thank you for joining us.
Dr. Moon.
Dr. Miller, excuse me.
I'm not seeing you as a patient, so I'm not really concerned about that. I'm trying to find how to turn on my camera. I'm not terribly well versed. But thank you, Nona, for all your time spent. Very nice presentation. Hello, Mary. Hello, Carter. Hello, Craig. I'm still having trouble finding where to turn on my camera.
We
But,
can hear you very well.
Okay, yeah, I've had a. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
I've lost the screen. Oh, there we go. At any rate, main concerns is any development of 50 units is just incongruous with the charter of the town of Portola Valley. And the original proposal to put all 50 of the very low income housing units within the same development, to me, seems like a recipe for disaster. I think any development should be mixed income use. I am flexible to some extent with timelines. And actually, this is the first, I joined about 5:40 p.m. and this is the first I've been aware that the Fogarty property was being considered for part of this housing element mandate. But it's, as Nona points out, the shifting of the Los Trancos Creek footprint is very real, and likely with global warming will grow somewhat, and how much it may shift from year to year or decade to decade. And it's a better alternative than Dorothy Ford open space. I firmly believe that any development there is just geotechnically not financially feasible.
Thank you.
I would prefer to see two developments of 25 units over a single development of 50. Again, I first moved to Portola Valley in 1972 at the start of 6th grade, and I mean, my heart and my life is here. But we do have this state mandate for housing, and I appreciate the forces that be. But I guess that's all input I really have to add. Thanks for letting me speak first. I've been up since 4:30. It's been a very full day.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Miller. Really appreciate it. Okay, if there are no other questions about 3350,
Another question, which is kind of a bigger picture question, not really related to the work you did here. I think the view shed impact is really interesting, particularly if it does become one building, either Dorothy Ford or this property. And how we as a committee would be able to figure that out, because it would be particular private residences that would be overlooking this. I was just recently at a house that has really grand view, and it's kind of I don't have that, and so it'd be interesting to figure out how do we analyze how do we analyze that? It's just sort of a question that I thought I'd raise.
I think, is that more of a discussion question and a,
The question.
okay,
Then
okay.
because she had brought that up. but I didn't
Okay.
think of that.
Well, I mean, I can answer that I did a quick line of sight analysis on this, and that's what it's based on. So, in most GIS software, you can do that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you can just have that online. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to more properties in the Alpine, uh,
I-
Los Trancos.
I can talk about Hawthorne's just for a second. And that's just to say, the holidays happened. Anna Ruiz has been out until yesterday, and we have an appointment on Friday. And she's the executive director of MROSD. And so we have a number of things to talk to her about. And I think having a it's my opinion, that having a direct contact with MROSD and talking through these various different land issues, because the immediate neighbors of Fogety are MROSD, and potentially that's a site of worker housing for them. So there were many different intersections that we need to cover with MROSD, including the possibility of a farm type housing complex that would reflect the historic complex at Hawthorne's for farm workers or MROSD workers for that matter.
Okay, I have a question that is not about Hawthorns, but it's about MROSD. And since you're going to be meeting with them, I think that MROSD has some property next to the parking lot along Portola Road. I think at one point that had been viewed as maybe there was going to be more parking there. There's land. So first of all, correct me if I'm wrong. If you look at Windy Hill, I'm talking about Windy Hill. Sorry, I wasn't clear. And to the right of the parking lot, is that MROSD? Okay. Is it possible for you to talk to them about worker housing over in that area? I'm just trying to come up with ideas and explore. And if we're going to meet with MROSD, and I know they're interested in worker housing, can that be brought up?
We're not doing discussion, we're doing questions.
Any other questions about Hawthorns or MROSD? Okay, good, great. Any more updates from Alpine, Los Trancos, Skyline?
Let's see, I was trying to post about time. Sorry. and this machine doesn't work like the other machine. That's it.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the Portola Town Center corridor. I don't know, Karen, do you have any updates? Okay. Well, I have one question, and I'm not sure anyone here can answer it, but as we probably all know, HCD is very favorable to churches and housing on sites. And I wonder if anybody knows why, instead of that being low-income housing, it was put as above market rate. Because as we see with Ladera Church, they had the low income housing as well. And I don't know if anyone has the answer, but I realized it's very curious to me why we didn't pursue that.
Well,
It-
there's two different parts of your question. The first one is the California law. It's not really HCD that
Well,
favors churches.
Yes,
Yeah. and
yes,
then
state law.
Right, right. And
It-
from our conversation then, when we were all at the church, they were thinking of the direct employees of the church.
Okay.
Initially.
And,
as the
those were,
target
okay, I also, okay,
That's
I
what
would be,
recall in the
yeah, but
conversation.
I just, okay, and it's possible maybe they didn't understand what the income levels were. I just wondered why it was in there, because I've been reviewing a lot of housing elements, and most of the church housing that is in other housing elements is on the affordable side, not on the above market side. So it was just a question.
But do you want me to answer it or do you want to wait
Sure.
for discussion?
No, you can answer it.
It did come out of the idea that the community not being appropriate for very low income, and they did not have an understanding of what the level of income was at all. The church does a lot of outreach to the very low income, so they have a good sense of what very low income looks like, and they didn't think that that particular location would be able to provide resources for them,
Okay.
which may not be completely on point yet.
Yeah, well, they're exploring things. So, okay, so the only updates I have is there's a vacant lot, which is in Westridge. So I realize that's contentious, but I am talking with the owner tomorrow about that. Again, my viewpoint is let's explore everything we can. Let's get it on the list. Let's check it out. And may not be right today, but it might be right later. We just don't know. And then I also, this is a long shot, but because churches are on my mind, I want to go back to Our Lady of the Wayside, because apparently they might have just a few units there, but we may need filler. I'm looking at it that way. And then just to let you know, I did speak with Valley Presbyterian, and although they're very supportive of what we're doing, they don't have anything that they can offer at the moment, is the way I would put it. But they're very supportive. And I think that is it. Are there any other questions from anybody? There's some more outreach that we do need to do. Yeah, Ronnie?
The the vacant lot, was that from the original list? or
No,
have
this
you
is a
set-
property that's for sale now,
Okay.
and it's 2.5 acres. Any other questions? We do have some more outreach to do, and the holidays just was not the best time to be doing it. Okay. All right. Well, why don't we open it up for public comment, and then we'll take a quick bio break and we'll have committee discussion. All right, so first we have David Cardinal.
Hi, yeah, thanks. As usual, I have a bunch of stuff to say quickly. First, at the right, up road of Windy Hill, I think, is the Neely's private driveway. So if you want to let them put stuff on the meadow, Holly's been trying to put a studio there for 20 years, so that I'm sure she'd be happy to do something. More importantly, on Fogarty, what I kind of wonder about is whether we actually care about any of the housing goals that were set by the townwide committee that Carter was part of 5 years ago, where we wanted to provide housing for our workers, our seniors, and our kids. And that seems to be totally lost in this discussion. So I think that's important. Like in the Fogarty workers, you're talking about random people from somewhere above Skyline, and God knows they should probably need housing, but it doesn't have anything to do with what we think of as Portola Valley. So I think it's just kind of a like, we'll punt to somebody else if we can get done with it. Also, been a lot of complaints about mass transit, and there is less than no transit up there. Everybody has to own a car for sure. And as far as evacuation, like Mary said, well, they can go out Route 92. Well, that's 18 miles along the ridge line that we're thinking might be burning. So if you want to compare that to putting something down by Stanford Wedge, that it doesn't compute for me. I also don't think that the low-income housing developers are going to bite. If we have to buy a bunch of property from the Fogartys, Trinity, or Habitats for Humanity, they're not going to bite. I mean, that's just not a thing. And buying property on Skyline to bail out the Fogartys, no, I think we have housing properties. I don't want to spend $4 or $5 million of our money to, I don't know, put housing up there for people to like farm pumpkins. I mean, God bless them, but that's not what Portola Valley is about. And then on 3350, I think that's hopeless. You show that thing, and they have these big buildings in front of his house. So if you want to do that, we have to buy his 3 acres. And if we have the money and we want to raise the money, that's great by me. I think it's a great site, but it's not going to happen automatically. So I love what you're doing. I love the idea, but I think there's a lot of practicalities that have to be incorporated before any of these things are relevant to what we as Portola Valley want for our future of housing for our seniors, our kids, and our workers. And I think that was always our goal, not just to make bureaucrats in San Francisco or Sacramento happy. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Next up is Jim Rooney. Oh, wait, did his hand go down? No. Yeah, so. Go ahead, Jim.
Hello. Yeah, hey, thanks everybody for the opportunity to comment. I'm actually the property owner next to Martin on the corner of Westridge and Alpine. Obviously, it's the first opportunity I've had to see the proposal. I guess just my question is I know in Dorothy Ford Field there was an interest in building high density housing because you could get a large number of units and get a more significant number of low income housing. If you were to build on Martin's property, I guess my question is you're looking to put 50 units on there as well, or would the committee consider lower density housing that would perhaps be stand out a little bit less than would 50 units on that particular piece of land? In other words, are you just looking for additional housing to meet the overall quota of the housing mandate, or are you looking specifically to find a piece of property that would accommodate a large number of units on a single piece of land?
Do you want me to take a stab at answering that? Our charge, Jim, is to try to find a better building site or sites to replace building at Dorothy Ford Park and Open Space. So at this point in time, what we're trying to do is look at every single alternative we have and come up with what we might think is are some better alternatives. So I think there's been discussion that financially it may be more feasible to do all the units in one site, but there may be opportunities to look across multiple sites, but we just don't know yet. But our charge is to try to replace that housing over on Dorothy Ford Park and Open Space.
I guess maybe this is a good time to say that I am entirely recused from the Westridge discussion. I am conflicted, but as just to clarify, Jim, that these are not proposals. These are merely suggestions, discussions, ways to look at different problems. There's no definite proposal being made here.
Okay, are there any other questions from anyone in the schoolhouse or on Zoom? Okay, what I would love to do is take a break. Oh, Betsy.
Greetings to everybody. Happy New Year. I want to agree with David Cardinal that this is a mammoth amount of work. There are no automatic solutions. Thank you so much for pouring your heart and soul into identifying what is out there that hopes to liberate us from the problems that I see at Ford. I have had such an opportunity over the course of the last 4 and 5 years to unattach myself from prior conceptions, liberate myself from what should or shouldn't happen, because so many things have changed in this world that I would not have predicted. As I look at Ford and what the town has been through already, and Nona very much pointed to this, being on the edge of Meandering Creek, and looking at, just 3/4 of a mile downstream from the Ford site, is where Los Trancos merges with the San Francisco Creek. That is amongst the more studied watersheds in California, and it's overseen by multiple agencies that are going to have a very serious interest in what we do. We know already about some of the priority species that travel through that creek that are of great interest to state agencies, but we're going to have a lot to answer to. So I feel the cost burden and the political burden of proceeding with Ford, if we can find possibly another alternative. I'm also looking at the soil qualities there because it's in the creek shed, and it's known, the alluvial soils are known to be porous and weak soils, so they're going to require a lot of extra underpinning and structural support. So I just hope that the committee is taking into consideration, because I hear Karen's point, perhaps we're going to have to mass these, what were conceptually 4 buildings into one mass building. And that isn't necessarily going to defray the kind of costs that we will have to invest if we don't get a site with better soil quality. So the closer we get to the creek, the more we need to take that into consideration. I haven't mentioned the oak trees because they've been front and center in all of our minds and imagination as we started to consider this. So thank you for your considerable efforts that continue on. And just to say that at the next Open Space Committee meeting, we'll take up, the members of the committee will take up consideration of the appropriate uses for the Open Space Fund. Given the voters 5 times at the ballot measure talks about using the funds for open space purposes. And I think protecting our creeks and clean water, protecting our open spaces is very much of that flavor. So I put that out there. Generally, come to the Open Space Committee if you have ideas about appropriate use. And think that a lot of ideas will be surfaced then. Thank you for the
Thank you, Betsy. Okay, it's 6:38. Why don't we come back at 6:45 and we'll have a discussion? Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So thank you to everybody that presented their updates. And I want to know now, do we have any discussions about any of the property, any thoughts? Karen, do you want to start since you're over? You're my first person I'm seeing.
Surprisingly, I don't at the moment, so I'll let somebody else go.
Okay. Nona, any?
This isn't really a comment about a specific parcel, but it relates more to the proposal that we're going to talk about later, and that it just seems really clear from the discussions that we're having that we need a bit more guidance from the council in terms of what kind of a list they want us to come back with and when. So even for example, the question about is a privately owned property better or worse than a town-owned property? I think it can go either way in some dimensions, but it would be helpful to know what the council's position on that is. And the same, we've heard so many times that only a project of 40 to 50 units is going to be viable. And if is that really our charge, or can we continue to look for, a range of options?
Okay, Ronnie?
So I'm looking through my notes. It seems like basically we've had a lot of activity. And I think we're down to like a few viable sites, it seems. The ones I see as being potentials are Fogarty, if that pans out, and it seems like the information we really need there is, well, part of it is this question about what the status of the Williamson Act is of the property. So hopefully we'll find that out soon. Although I guess either way, I mean, that kind of determines if it goes the farm worker housing direction or non-farm worker housing. It seems like maybe either could be viable. So there's that. There's 3350 Alpine there. Personally, I think what I would imagine is a combined development with Dorothy Ford Park and 3350. So kind of splitting the units between the two to reduce the density on Dorothy Ford Park and, have more creek setback, et cetera. And then Hawthorne's is interesting, but it seems pretty speculative to me at this point. I guess we do have a meeting scheduled, so we'll see what comes out of that. But doesn't seem like we have a lot of other traction currently to me.
What do you, I actually think Christchurch is very promising. Now, they want
Yeah.
time, they've gotten a $10,000 grant to explore how they can do things, but I think having that property owner interest is at the top of the list, and it's there. And so, but they need some time. So I would say that is a definite thing, and I think it's a good thing for the town. So
Yeah, sorry, I guess I wasn't thinking of that one. I overlooked it. I mean, to me, that one, it seems like it's probably not coming in at, just my interpretation of what they've said, what you guys have said, probably not going to be 20 plus units. And also it seems pretty small area. So maybe I mean, currently it's 6 in our housing element, and maybe that goes to 10, and maybe, and reclassified as low income. And so I guess I would view it as something that is not gonna, replace Dorothy Ford Park, but could be just something that reduces, from 50 down to 40, basically. So, yeah, but yeah, it does seem like it has traction and will go somewhere. I don't know about their time frame.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, well, I'll go. I just, I had to, are there, so, but you're not, anything else that we've sort of talked about is not really, in your mind, it's
Think
just
I'm
not,
missing something, or?
I need to think about that for a second. Yeah, actually, okay, so I'll go because I'm talking. I still think that the end of the soccer field is an option. And I think, Carter, I know you drew something for 8 units. We might be able to get more. We need to look at something like Habitat for Humanity. We'd have to find, obviously, the right developer, figure that out. But again, this is one of those things where I wouldn't take it off the list, I guess is what I'm saying, is I think,
Yeah.
and that also could be for employee housing. And maybe there's even a way, okay, I'm throw this out. You get the church for some, you get maybe Fogarty for some, and then you have even a consortium where there have been some local retailers expressing interest in having worker housing. And maybe there's something, we talk with the schools, we talk with Roberts, we talk with the Ramey's garages, Alpine Hills. I don't know. I guess my feeling is there could be something out there, and we just, the holidays coming in kind of didn't help have conversations, but it's a new year and, we have to at least make the call.
Yeah. I I guess well, so I know you weren't just commenting on this, but for me, the soccer field itself, I would be very against that being a site for housing. Just because I think it's a very high priority to keep the recreation facilities, and it's a, heavily used field, et cetera. And so then if you are only talking about the substation, to me, it seems like kind of an awkward site then for housing. That, I mean, you're taking away the parking for the field and as well as the other facilities there. And you're somehow needing to provide more parking for the housing itself. And then having that housing right there, I think, kind of has a negative impact on the use of the field, or vice versa, the use of the field on the housing. So, and yeah, in terms of number of units, it's not 50, it's maybe 10, but plus, I mean, I guess maybe there's an idea for up to 20, but yeah, I won't prioritize it highly myself.
Yeah, I wouldn't, I think that just more exploration needs to be had on some of these to better understand what we could do. What could we do about the parking? What could we do with the, moving the sheriff somewhere? I mean, obviously, there's more that needs to be explored. So, anyway, Mary, do you?
I've been working on this full speed for the last 6 months. And every time I talk to somebody, I find somebody else who's interested in doing it. So it's really been just a question of not opening enough doors, according to doors or drawers or whatever image you want to imagine. I think we just have to keep opening the drawers to see, talk to your neighbor, talk to whoever you think is interested in the subject, and find out what they think. I mean, like, for example, you helped me a lot with the Fogarty's. Okay, so keep your eyes out. We hadn't gotten that. I think that this has been surprising me every time I turned around, actually. there are at least four more properties that I can think of that need to be allocated to these lists, and then brought forward. I'm hoping that we'll go to the council at the end of February with some of these, just for some guidance, with some of these things to talk about. I'd like to do it as part of my liaison report tomorrow. But I just think we need to keep our eyes open, because we can do housing that not everybody thinks it's the kind of housing they want, but we can do housing in a number of places which will meet the needs of our community. We'll see a whole lot more when we do the RFPs, when we actually get people saying, yeah, I can do that. And we don't have to say yes. I mean, that's what an RFP is about. So those are my thoughts.
Just to clarify my comment, I mean, I think it's not I think Fogarty could be, a really good site, and like, if we have a site that works, then that's good. And so, it wasn't necessarily like saying that the effort's a failure, but maybe we've found a solution.
We need to get going on it. We need to keep going. So, which has actually been really fun, because they're so rare.
Okay. Carter, any thoughts?
I have a bit of a different pivot that I'd like to, discuss. Instead of looking at properties, I think one of the things that would help property owners, as they're being approached, is understanding what kind of incentive scenarios, or imagery, that they could imagine. At this point, a property owner, that is approached about housing is first going to look at their business, and or their lifestyle and their neighbors, and think, am I up for this? Do I want to put myself in a position, of being confronted by my neighbors on a regular basis, or, am I gonna lose business as a consequence of my potential participation? And I think we need to, come at this from a more, creative approach, that says, here's what's in it for the town, here's what's in it for the neighbors, and here's what's in it for the property. Because I do think that there are lots of places to do more distributed, concentrations, rather than, one big lump, of 50 or 70 or whatever the housing element, is calling for. That actually provides extraordinary functionality, an opportunity, for the property owners to either deal with lifestyle issues or business style issues, or, employee issues that, I was reminded of, with Dave's comments, which was talking about seniors, workers, and kids. If we, instead of trying to just create, below market rate or, affordable, housing, actually think about the users, and the tenants, and the lifestyle around that, rather than the classification based on income. I mean, you can get there, by attending to the users. But I think that and it might be beyond probably beyond the purview of of, this committee. But you know, as I've talked to, you know, property owners potentially about housing, you know, I get this pushback and say, well, what about my neighbors? And, you know, what about my business? And what about my income? You know, and in the case of the Jelics, you know, they're going, well, I'd have to tear my building down. You know, and what do I do in the meantime? Well, there are lots of ways, you know, to financially deal with, you know, with those ramifications. You know, and, you know, and avoid kind of the, you know, the brain damage. And, you know, create something that really responds more proactively, you know, to the long-term benefits of the town and the long-term benefits of the property owners and the long-term benefits of the neighbors and, you know, the future, you know, tenants, you know, for the building. So, I think, I mean, you know, going down the list, you know, and doing the analysis of each, I think is interesting. I think it's part of the analysis. But I think that, you know, that's like treating the symptom, you know, instead of, you know, treating the cause for the disease. Because I think the cause of the disease is that there is a housing crisis. And let's, instead of just, you know, forcing us into solving a numerical problem and where are we going to do it, and, you know, and then, you know, being forced into, you know, having to do something, I think we could take a more enlightened approach, you know, to actually do something really, really good. As an aside, the Woodside, you know, community has actually put out an RFP, you know, for a town center master plan review, you know, to look at what the future is, you know, for their town center. You know, that actually uses that opportunity, you know, to hire planners, you know, and architects, you know, to design, you know, potential solutions, you know, to see a future for, you know, the commercial center, their, you know, their residential center and their services, you know, in a way that I think is kind of what I was heading to. You know, is saying, okay, we've got these, you know, these couple different areas of town that kind of, you know, have always made sense. You know, how, in the absence of, you know, the existing buildings and, you know, opportunities, is there something that you could plan ahead for, you know, that would gestate over time into something really, really cool? Yeah, and to create, you know, a positive vibe around it. But anyway, that's,
So the only way we could do that would be if we got a grant.
I know, because you're broke.
Yeah, but we could get a grant.
Yeah.
And I bet there are planning grants out there, and you certainly are getting enough pressure and enough press so that as soon as we get our audit done, we'll be able to get a grant
So, anyway.
and get a plan. I think that would be awesome.
So Carter, it sounds to me, I mean, I think that we as a town do need to be having a master plan and be planning for the future. Do you have some, and I kind of am hearing, I think that, at least I think you're alluding to the Alpine Portola Corners, the commercial areas of town. But
I think there's a couple areas, you know, I think there's the Alpine Portola Corners, you know, area. I also think there's, you know, some opportunities, you know, associated with, you know, the towns, you know, the current town center, the village square, you know, the church properties, you know, and potentially, you know, the lowlands, you know, of El Mirado Ranch. You know, that could, you know, support the kinds of things that create, you know, housing for seniors, housing for workers, housing for for our kids as they, are kind of in between, and housing for, so that families can exchange, and it has some smaller spaces and some bigger spaces and, and potentially even, create some, some synergy so that, that income producing businesses, like a hotel or a resort or a conference center, starts to create, some energies, to create income, for the town, that then there's, because housing that is affiliated, with stuff is always going to make more sense because it reduces the number of car trips. It creates a synergy around services. God forbid we could have a post office again and a drugstore again, and I mean, anyway, that's where I'm coming from, because I think that if this committee said to the to the council, we've looked at this, and we're finding some impediments to our headway, because of the psychology, and not having any set of incentive scenarios or imagery, that creates a positive energy around it. Because the sentiments, I mean, there's, I love Marty. Marty Miller is one of my, is a dear friend, and a client. I did his hat. And, for him to offer, to potentially talk about, property, in public, and in front of people, and, deal with his neighbors, I think is an incredibly courageous. At the same time, there are things that he's saying that everybody else is thinking. Why does it have to be so dense? Why can't it be more Portola Valley-like? I know a lot of, what it went into, the planning for the housing and the housing element right now was, associated with either the perceived or actual pressures that HCD, provided that said it's got to be 20 units, an acre, or otherwise it doesn't count. And I think that we have the opportunity, to create a lot of things. I mean, if, I go down the list of the property owners and the businesses, and there's a lot of small business, including my own, that suffers from a lack of ability to attract employees because housing is so darn expensive. And, if I had an opportunity to have, 6 houses, for young employees to come in and grow into my business, I'd actually have, have some legacy, going forward. I have a real hard time. I've been advertising since before COVID, for new employees, and I've gotten one since then, and I lost one, to retirement, mainly because of the cost of housing. And that's probably more laundry than you want to look at.
How do we get from what you're talking about to like the sites, or are you suggesting that it can't be done?
I don't know that you can. I think that, right now, I don't have a linear path, to answer that question because I don't know for sure. As I started to approach this, even before I volunteered for this committee, I was looking for the low hanging fruit, trying to find the biggest property that had, the greatest opportunity, and I arrived at the Sequoias, and said that if we could convince them, to rezone, 4 acres out of their mob, for, 20 units an acre, we'd solve our problem, at least for this round, all at once. And if, I still believe that if we're trying to solve a problem right now, that's gonna be, that. And to me, there's MRSD, there's the Priory, and there's the Sequoias and the town center are the places where you could solve that once and, once for the next, through this rain cycle.
You don't think Fogarty?
I'm concerned about Fogarty because, of the remote nature of it, and, to get to Karen's point, the septic system and, the support system up there is, pretty limited and I've got limited experience, but my experience with Williamson Act, contracts, are they're very complicated and very limiting. And they usually have to be, San Mateo County is enforcing them in a way right now where they're rescinding Williamson Act contracts that aren't actually producing marketable, agriculture. Taking a 13-acre, property and taking it, out of the potential, for agriculture because you're gonna end up needing to do septic systems and parking lots and, in order to get the, 50 or 70 units, there. Unless you start to attach that property to other Williamson Act, properties.
Right.
You could potentially create the matrices.
That's
that might work. But I think it's really complicated.
Yeah.
And, to get to, the point about transportation and part of the reason farm worker housing works so well, when farm worker housing is adjacent or integrated into farms, is that it reduces the car trips and makes it more affordable, but usually it's pretty temporary and short term. It's not long term.
Yeah, the number one need in farm workers is permanent housing.
Yeah.
Which this could be. There are
But
a number of
but
Williamson
still,
Act-
there's a lot of lack of support up there. There's not a grocery store.
I was gonna say, and this is really deceptive, that the only time I got really excited about this committee was when I started imagining what the community would be like up there. Because I've always loved the Fall Line, that whole area. And having a planned community that was geared to being agrarian, because, you know me, I'm going to have a chicken coop and a garden and a lot of self-sufficiency going on and a lot of community around people who like being in the outdoors and all the people who work at Ellis's, work also people who contract for all of us, and commute down.
Yeah, but there's a lot of reasons why that doesn't work. Pescadero has got, all kinds of, workers and people there, but, it lacks, sewer system, it lacks adequate water. There's flooding dangers. There's a lot of
No
problems.
flooding up there.
Yeah, there isn't any flooding, but, it's a long way from anything. When you're, well, I know, but when gas is, is $5 or $6 a gallon, that's a long ways away.
And of course, my favorite vision is that they have a shared power like Stanford does with its developments. There's all kinds of ways of dealing with those things.
Anyway, that was my 2 cents.
Okay,
It's Really,
I-
really trying to provide a bigger vision, rather than trying to solve the immediate problem, because I think if the immediate problem is, I think you can go to the Sequoias, and provide an incentive scenario that somehow
Exactly.
incentivizes them, to rezone to 20, parts of that property to 20 units an acre.
And that has to be done in order to do it. Aren't they already? What's the zoning then?
Zoning there is single family, it's R1.
In the Sequoia?
Sequoias is R1, it's not the own thing.
How did they put it in the meeting?
It's a conditional use permit. Just like, just like the Priory is
So we don't have to
Okay.
change it.
well, you don't have to, but you'd have to,
Well,
you'd have to change our conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you. Jocelyn, do you have any thoughts?
We keep going back and forth between like what our task is today on this committee and then long-term, which is great. I think we've come up with so much that will be very helpful for our future selves. But if we look at what do we need to do for this subcommittee, I think, we've identified some pretty good potential sites that we could then take to the, whatever that next step is, wherever that next committee is, to say, hey, look, we did these are things we think are feasible for the town to look into as the next steps. I don't think we're the ones that are going to be able to make any of the next decisions. So that would be my suggestion, is we just take we have a great list to keep for short-term and long-term, and we collect our thoughts of what's great for short-term and submit those to whoever our next reviewers are.
Okay, thank you.
Can
Yeah, I have
reserve
a-
the right to comment now? Since I didn't comment. I like Jocelyn's kind of ending statements there, because that's kind of where I'm at, in that Carter, you may have some long-term visions, but I can't imagine we're going to get that done by May. So I sort of think that the best thing would be to send our report on to the town council so that we can get some feedback. Because I think, I don't think what else.
Yeah, and we'll move on to that proposal. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Do you have any more comments? Okay, I just wanted to provide offer a few more comments. I think having that long-term vision is really important, and I think we do need to figure out how to revitalize this town, if you will. I don't know, people may not think it needs to get vitalized, but we are losing the younger generation. We have a graying generation. We have older commercial buildings. There is stuff that has to happen. But that said, I think we do need to look at what we've been charged with, which is looking at these properties. And I really like the idea of as much affiliate housing as we might be able to get. And for that reason, that we support our community, we reduce car traffic. There's all sorts of good things that happen to that. And I am inspired by Fogarty. I realize there's things that have to come out. I'm inspired by Christ Church. I'm still think the end of the soccer field could be good for workforce housing for our community. And we could look at a consortium. As I said, there might be local retailers interested in that. I don't know. And I think that there's a few more phone calls we have to have. There are some properties that might be right for, I also think 3350 and property owner interest is great too. So I do think we have those, but I think we need a little bit more time to explore just a few more ideas out there. And I love the idea. And I think, Nona, you had mentioned this when we were chatting. We need to figure out how we share what's in it for you kind of outreach to property owners. And Terrence, perhaps we can talk to you and come up with something that will help us sort of show that incentive or provide what those incentives are to folks, because there could be something there and we're missing it now, or we don't see it. With respect to 3350 versus Ford, the other thing that I like is that this ties to the general plan and keeping the vistas open to the left. And I think that property is more suited to what our general plan is trying to do. So I wanted to throw that out as well. And the last thing that again, I'm talking about filler. in reviewing some housing elements, I found a municipality, Monte Sereno, who was able to fulfill, I'm going to get the number not quite right, but a substantial portion. They got a certified housing element with 178 out of like 210 total RENA units are with ADUs and JADUs. And they did a huge outreach program and they provided big incentives to folks, but they got it approved. And so my question is really about JADUs, because those, in my mind, because they have to be less than 500 square feet, could we look at something like that if we could again go out and talk to folks, and we may not have the time, I realize it, so I'm throwing out an idea where people commit to that and we can include it in those numbers. And again, as filler, it's not going to take care of the whole problem, but it also stays within the guidelines of our general plan and what our community is. So I'm just throwing it out there because these are things that are spinning around in my head. So. All right. Any other comments? All right.
Well, I guess one comment I have to make is that the team has been working together so well. I just want to thank everybody for the amount of time and energy and technical assistance everybody has put into it. It's been very gratifying. And also, I guess I want to do a special thank you to the Fogarty family who, second generation, who have been brave enough to come forward with their support and interest in the town's well-being.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have finished the discussion of that. And we are now going to move on to the proposal. I realize there's one hand up, but we have finished the public comment section. So keep that hand up. We'll call on you soon. So Ronnie, do you want to go over your proposal?
Well, it's just following our last meeting where we said we wanted to discuss it further, and I just made some minimal updates trying to accommodate some of the suggestions during that meeting. The updates that I made were, I did add in a placeholder for hawthorns, and I removed the placeholders for the Nat Horse Triangle, since it seemed like there was no specific sites that we were pursuing there. And on the list of questions, I think I added one of, before I had 1 site or 5 sites, and now I added a 2 to 3 sites question. Other than that, though, I think we could just go into the discussion, what people feel about what we should do next with that.
Okay. Well, let's open it up for questions first from the committee. Any questions on the proposal that is included in the agenda packet? Okay. Then let's open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in the schoolhouse that would like to comment? All right. We have one online, David Cardinal.
Hi, thanks. First of all, I totally agree with the comments from Carter and from Karen about the fact that we need to bring our town a little bit forward from where it used to be, which is great. And second, I heard Mary's comments about some idyllic agrarian village on Skyline, but why not here? If it's such a great idea to have a place where workers live near where they work and they can commute and all that, why does it have to be up there, which really isn't Portola Valley? I mean, it's somewhere else. Can't we do that in our actual Portola Valley? I think there's a demand for that. Related to that, affiliated housing is tricky because it's only for people who own the property. We have a lot of business owners here who would love to have their workers not have to commute from 1 to 3 hours away, including our fire and police departments. But they don't own property to put housing on. So they need help and we need to do something about that. Finally, the 20 units thing is a little bit deceiving, I think. It's a safe harbor from HCD, where if you say it's 20 units per acre, they're going to let you off the hook. But as we've seen with the Willow Commons development, if you're willing to do a long-term lease at below market rate rents, and for the same for Stanford, you don't have to do that. The problem is, unlike the 20 unit safe harbor, you actually have to pony up and do that. So it could be 10 units, it could be 5 units. If you're really willing to commit to it, you'll get credit for it in the long term. You just don't get to bank it in your like little HCD paper plan. So thanks. I think you guys are turning up a lot of stones or things under stones, which I appreciate, but I think there's a lot more work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy.
The comment is coming earlier than I wish it were, because I'd be a little stronger ground, more solid ground if I heard you all weigh in here and where you're coming from. The work that I think predominantly Ronnie and Karen have put together is incredibly helpful. I personally would like to see this committee mature and come together with their own consensus, ask these questions of yourselves, and before you go to the final stop, I think getting early feedback is, you guys are all, you're all good thinkers, you're all super competent, you're experienced volunteers and students of the town. And I'd really prefer myself that you come to your provisional conclusion and then take it to the council. It would, that approach would, I think, also afford the extra information that I think I hear is coming from Christchurch, but there are a few other component pieces that would not be able to be a part of this report. So I think you're on a good, solid path. But I really believe in the, I don't mean complete independence, but the independent committees serve us really well. And most of you serve on committees, serve us really well by forming a point of view and communicating that point of view to the council. And then this is advisory, of course, the council will have their own feedback. But I think otherwise this will be the town council's opinion, not yours. Thank you for your full investment in your opinion.
Thank you, Betsy. I don't see any. Oh, I'm sorry. Christy C.
Thank you. I wanted to let you all know this is excellent work done by this committee. You've been working hard, and I think it's showing up in your meeting, and the meeting's super organized. So thank you, Karen, for running a good meeting. I do have something to say about the Fogarty and the community up there. I have some friends that live up there, and it's quite a tight community. I'm not sure I agree it's a different community, but you know, one of my son's friends bought a house up there because it's affordable. I know when we came into the community, we looked up there and we looked at Half Moon Bay and we ended up finding one here, but it is a way to get into this community. And I think we should remember that. I do think that people do drive the 18 miles out to 92 and to high schools from Skyline. And I know of families that have done that. What brings them together is the art fair up there. The men volunteer on a volunteer fire department, and they get themselves trained. So I do see it as a close community to keep your families together. So I wouldn't, I like the Fogarty option. I also had a question on, have you enlisted a realtor assigned to reporting back to you on all properties that are for sale on a monthly basis? So, and reporting back to you so you know what the options are for the housing fund. You know, if we were to buy any land, we want to be on top of it, and is that person assigned to your committee? Would be another question. I love the idea of reading other housing elements and studying other similar communities to see what their solutions were. So thank you, Karen, for that Monte Sereno. I've always had my eye on Monte Sereno because they are so similar to us. We might want to look at Saratoga and I don't know, Los Gatos. I mean, even though they're not in San Mateo County, we can see what they've created. So that's really good outreach. And then I have heard of Lafayette combining some type of supplemental or senior housing with a hotel. It's kind of a out there idea, but it is an option of combination that I'd like to throw out there. Okay, that's it. Good work.
Thank you, Christy. Okay, well, let's start the committee discussion. Comments on the proposal, thoughts? Oh. Oh,
Um,
the-
that's-
the-
Yeah, I'm finding the. yeah,
the cover page says ad hoc site
16.
evaluation committee.
Page 16 and, yeah, that was the end. So up to So,
Did-
yeah, okay. So I don't know, it's okay. So it's basically has, a list of sites, and then I think the main thing is the recommendations page, which is on page 30 of the agenda packet. And so the proposal is that we would each vote or, provide a score on each of these recommendation questions.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing, so I'm imagining the Zoom people can't hear too. Thanks. Mary.
I don't even have my speaker on. Hi.
Maybe could we put on the screen the page 30? Yeah, and the idea is for us to, each provide a score like 1 to 6 on each of these items. As a way of understanding what we think collectively. And then send that as a report to the town council, along with potentially a list of questions that are on the following page. And of course, we can modify and add to or subtract.
And shouldn't we try and answer these questions live today? I mean, for ourselves.
Yes. Sure.
I mean, that was a good comment. Come to put in some.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know if some people have interpreted it as we're just asking the town council to sort of weigh in. That wasn't really my intention. My intention was to focus on these recommendations, have us provide our input, and, we should discuss these first so that everyone is kind of, gets a chance to weigh in, on the questions and add whatever questions we want. And then, you know, this would reflect our opinion. We would provide the, recommendations, by, voting on these items.
Does anyone want to start with their thoughts
Can I
or?
ask a question? about
Absolutely.
This, the list on what for number 14, recommend Hawthorne's Historic Complex for 10 units. Why only 10? And we have another line that says 500.
But
I'm kidding, but I think the
Um,
Hawthornes, we
uh,
could put a lot of housing.
Yeah,
More than 10 for sure.
the reason I had 10 was because that was my interpretation of what was on the table. I think maybe it should be more. Yeah, based on the discussion. So for a lot of these, or for some of them, I put both, because it seemed like, you know, maybe both were viable options, like, Fogarty property might be 50 units, might be 10 units, at least back when it seemed like it was potentially just going to be their own farm worker housing. So anyways, I think we would put whatever made sense to have as, a recommendation for us to assess. And so for Hawthorne's, I guess, the way I understand it today, yeah, I probably would put maybe both 50 and 10 as options, and we could, you know, I guess our assessment would be like, if 50 units are viable here, this is how I feel about this site as, being a recommended site. Or if 10, you know, this is how I feel.
So I think all of this is great, but I personally am not, I think we need more information in order to feel more comfortable to fill out the grid. So we need some more time. I need more time. I want to hear what happens at the Hawthorne's meeting. I want to find out about Fogarty. I want to be as realistic as possible, but I do think there are questions that we have for the town council that would help provide clarity for us as well. And I'm wondering if we can get some questions answered that might help us move forward. You know, if you go to the next page, right? Isn't it the next page that has questions for town council, that page? It's the next page, Elizabeth, just. Emily's gonna pull it up on the screen. And I think there could be others, like we've talked about, should we be looking for private property alternatives or public property alternatives? And we could give an update on where we are and see if we're headed in the right direction. Like if Mary, this is just me visualizing, so I am open to all comments, but if Mary goes to the council meeting, say even tomorrow night, with a committee update and says, these are some properties that we're looking at. The committee is struggling with if we, you know, do we need to, what's our priority in finding a certain size site? What's our priority in public versus private? What else do you want us to do? Be clear about our deliverable, which in my mind is we're creating this list and an evaluation and a master that we can have as we move forward with more housing element initiatives in the future. But to get these things answered maybe now, as well as here's some feedback, I think it might help me with the evaluation process. I just think there's more doors to open. There may be just one conversation that we have and that'll, you know, seal the deal or whatnot, but that's sort of where I'm at.
Just because I watched too many town council meetings, I don't think you can get a lot of answers in Mary's reporting back. They, you know, typically it's more just questions for Mary about what happened in the committee. Maybe someone can make a short comment, but it's not agendized tomorrow night. So because it's not agendized, I don't think you can get that depth. And so I think the initial impetus to do a report, an earlier report, would be to get some thoughts back. So, but it has to be on the agenda, and just an update from a committee isn't an agendized item. So I think that
Does anyone know if it's possible to to talk to the subcommittee, which is Mary and Judith,
that
and
would
get,
be, that would be different. That's, yeah, because
just to get that information from council and guidance? I don't know. How do other people, I'm just throwing this out here because I want to do this. I think when Mary mentioned at end of February, that sounds good because hopefully we're going to have some answers by then and we'll be able to have more information on which to evaluate. But I think we could also be going to the subcommittee if we can and getting clarity if we need that.
Actually, I think some of these could be answered by Terrence.
Which I don't think so.
If we're unable to find sites for 50 very low income, should we pursue an option where BFP remains in our house, OSA, but with reduced density?
That's completely a town council priority. That's
Okay.
not-
All right.
I mean, I think it could be our committee that has an opinion about that or the town council, but
Terrence is speaking up.
No, I was gonna say, I have to agree with Commissioner Krasinski. These are policy questions that are best left to the committee and to the city council. I'm happy to inform with information, but these are policy questions.
Nona?
I agree that it would be helpful to get some guidance from the council subcommittee, partly because if I look at, say, question 3 on 50 very low income units or multiple sites distributed throughout the town, I think their answer to that would inform how I would vote on the recommendations. And so I guess if that's important information to have, then we sort of need to have it before we vote, is my opinion. I also, I think it would be helpful to know whether or not we have any role in the financing. And so questions 5 and 6, I mean, I thought those were not in our deliverables. And so that's a pretty basic question that I think could get answered.
Yeah. But you made a very good point. Not in our delivery.
Okay.
I'd like to add a number 7 onto this, if I could, which is consider tasking staff to get a grant for planning of the town, for plan development for the town, where it ideally would, whatever you said, Carter.
A master plan.
A master plan. Master plan for our commercial areas.
isn't that a longer term thing?
A planning grant is a starting point, and it's, it's a simple, positive starting point that is used by everybody. And I'm imagining that the municipalities have lots of these available to them. We have not been particularly clever with our planning grants. So we've just been paying for it all. And I think that's probably reflective slightly of our finances, but we can apply for planning grants. And that's
Right.
fast, relatively fast. They get a turnaround in 3 months or something. And usually it involves participation and being interviewed, all that kind of thing. It's a policy question. So I would add a number 7 would the town council consider requesting or at least looking into a master plan?
Is that something that has to go to council or could that, forgive me, but or could that be requested of staff by the mayor? Is that, or does it, I don't know. I don't know. It has to
I'm
go to
sure it has
council.
to go to
Okay,
council.
okay.
Uh,
To look
I-
into it? Okay,
As a recommendation from us, I think it would, we couldn't just go to the mayor and say, hey,
okay.
let's do a planning grant.
On the previous point from Nona, I mean, I guess I do feel like our committee should form an opinion on if we think we should be looking at a single site or, 5 sites with 10 units each or 2 sites. And so, I don't know, that's why I had on the previous slide that we would vote on that and provide our recommendation and then pass that on to the town council to get their feedback on it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to just punt it to them necessarily. And also if we were going to ask, I don't think we should ask the subcommittee. I think it should be the full town council
Me too.
for a policy question like that.
Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So we would need to have this thing in its entirety to go with the questions and we couldn't bifurcate things. Is that what you're thinking, Ronnie?
I mean, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
We can do whatever the collective committee
Okay.
wants to.
Can you distribute it as a Google sheet so we can all put our opinions and,
No, I don't think we could do that with the Brown Act.
no, okay?
I-
Suggestion withdrawn.
Yeah, you have it in the packet and this is the appropriate place to add comment.
Are we doing it right now
Yes,
theoretically? So we start at the top and go down 15
sure.
or go down 9? Are we on the? what
However
page are we
you-
on?
I had a comment on this.
On the screen.
Go ahead, Karen.
The wording should focus, that we should focus. And I guess sort of me, that we recommend one side or we recommend 2 to 3 sides. Should focus just to need the English in that. A little odd, whether to me, it's more of a policy recommendation that, this person has this, thinks that.
I see. So you would write it as SEC recommends 1 site per 50 unit?
Yeah, the approach.
Or
And I'm not.
I guess following all the other ones start with recommend, so you could just write a recommend
Yeah,
1 site.
yeah.
50 units?
That kind of an approach
Right.
of the first 3.
That would be fine. I think I wrote it that way because I guess,
I think it was earlier on and now that we've kind of, I don't know if we're completely finished with our list, but I think we're exhaustively looking at all of these different things. I don't think that this is a forward-looking thing. I think that when we deliver this in February, if that's the date, I think we should have, which was a public comment, we should have a statement there, each of us. I feel that would work, or I really, whether it would work practically or it would work with the nature of the town, and people can vote on their own opinions, but I think that should be for the opinion there,
sure.
what I'm suggesting. Does that make sense?
I mean, maybe in this meeting right now, we could get like a read on what people feel about these top 3
Yeah, yeah. Because I think
questions.
this is like the key.
I- And not a final vote, but just maybe.
Yeah, one of my questions is am I allowed to change my mind from today to the next meeting? Because
Absolutely.
Because the issue, my concern is that there are certain things that I want to, I need to know more. But in my ideal world, I can vote, but I want to be realistic as well. So that's,
To give
Um,
you,
I-
to give you just some context in the POG, in Mid-Penn, we did do that. We did kind of a preliminary, wasn't really a vote, but it was sort of like, oh, what was the temperature on each of the things? Kind of a talk around each of it. I don't think we should actually vote, but maybe just, oh, let's all first talk about one, let's talk about five.
Okay.
So we can each, so make sure that kind of everything that's on the table.
Number one, yes or no?
No.
well, can I ask it a different way? Of number 1, 2, and 3, those all go together. How many people would prefer, with the right to change their mind later on, focusing on one site for 50 units?
Yeah.
What-
One side is 50 units. Solve the problem of need. And that depends on a very small number of sites.
Here, my time card is.
That requires us,
That's still not.
doesn't work anymore. We turned it on and off too many times. In the best of all worlds, that solves the problem immediately, instantaneously, and, without having to look. So you've got one property owner to negotiate with. It solves the issue. And from my standpoint, that's the low hanging fruit. At the same time, if I had a choice, from an aesthetic and a town standpoint, I would, vote yes for number 3, because that spreads the load. And, and then, I mean, because to me, there's a lot of good answers here, and, if we start trying to, I don't know how to score them. Do we want to put a 1 to 3?
No, it's a 1 to 6.
1 to
on the top.
6.
Six on the top.
And I think the idea is it's not just what you think, it's not just, what you would like in a perfect world, but what you think would satisfy, I guess we could go back to the evaluation criteria. What's actually going to be viable to.
Okay. I'd probably abstain on all of them.
You'd have to abstain on all of them. Right.
And I probably should.
Yeah. I'll just abstain on
Jocelyn, I don't think you've said anything. Do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I'm happy to vote on them. And I think, I think we have been focusing on one site for 50 units. Right? That's what we've been doing. Not because we think that that's what we need to do. And I think that's a good thing, but that's really where our focus has been. We do have other options for fewer, which is good. I don't think we should lose them. But I think I could vote yes on all these. These are at least the first 3.
So you're a 1?
Yeah.
You have no
I think 1 for all 3.
Okay, there you
But
go.
when you say,
Okay,
so
how about 4?
what,
4,
Yeah,
What
keep
is
on
it?
going.
private sites, yes, we should look into, I think that's a great thing to look into.
Okay.
Which one's 3350?
Well, can we back up a bit? This is again why I said should focus. Because I'm assuming that when we are giving this, now that we know it's not till the end of February, the list will be not maybe, 100% done, but it's going to be pretty darn done. And maybe somebody will pop up between February and May, but I think it's better to assume that they won't, and then we'll have a solid list. And then from that list, do you recommend that we, do this?
and the idea, at least my idea for these first 3 questions were, it's not that you would support all of them. Which one do you support more? So like personally, I think we should focus on finding one site, maybe 2 to 3 sites, but I don't think we should focus on 5 sites, so I would score that low. And I think people have different opinions on that. It'll be good to understand and discuss.
Sorry, the other way. When we first started and we kind of all thought, really, we need to focus on the bigger. Because if we're going down to 5 sites for 50 units, 10 units, that could change a lot of what our recommendations would be, right? But I think, at least in my mind, I was going with the idea that really we had to focus on these sites that could hold 50 units just from a financially feasible standpoint.
I mean, I've heard other people in the committee say they prefer more sites distributed around town, so.
Right, I think aesthetically great, but financially, I thought we had heard pretty early on that it was more feasible to look at these 50 unit sites as an alternative for the Ford Field open space or whatever it's called.
So if I think back to the original housing element process, the goal was to try to spread the housing around. And it was a very difficult challenge, which is why we ended up with 50 at Dorothy Ford Park and open space. And nobody was really happy with that, right? That was the Sophie's choice of the time. And whether or not we can go back to that original goal, I don't know, because we now are in this situation that we're in. But I do know and that I guess, and Ronnie, you had mentioned this and it was in there, that the Roberts site, which would have been slated for 20 to 23 units an acre, was still on the table and was deemed feasible, at least by our planning department. And the Housing Element Committee chose to not impact that Nathwurst Triangle more. So it is feasible. In my mind, when I look at that, it was feasible at that time to spread it out. It was just not chosen to do so. So I personally would love to not see 50 low-income sites in one place. I really, so I would like to see if there's a way to do it that way. Now, it may not be feasible, I realize that, but our goal is to look at what the alternatives are and say, these are worth pursuing, these aren't worth pursuing. That's just how I feel, so.
Based on the comment you made before, Karen, if we did, if we got a commitment of, 50 GADUs, that would solve the problem.
Well, that would solve the problem. That's not realistic, though.
Why wouldn't it be?
Well, because of our time frame. I think that if we had,
Wait a minute. I mean, if you incentivize people to sign up and people were seriously would sign up, that would solve the problem for this round of REAM.
But as this subcommittee, do we have the ability to offer subsidies to people I mean, we don't, right? So how do we, that's not this
To
committee's.
make a recommendation that there's an incentive.
That's-
Free building permits.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, there's things that we could do.
Yeah.
But, the 500 square foot JADUs, and if you got, 50 property owners, to sign up.
And I think that's interesting, right? When we think about, but that's not our charge for this committee, the subcommittee, but there are a lot of things we could say, right? We could say rezone all the residential to be able to accommodate more housing,
Well,
to
it's-
offer incentives to do that. We could come up
It's
with a list,
actually
but that's not.
already done by SB 9, and
Yeah.
SB 450. AB 450. Because every property is rezoned to two units. That gives us 1,700 units.
I
I
mean,
don't know why we can't get credit for that.
the ADUs and the JDUs and SB9 and the, what do we call our overlay? Opt-in program. I mean, that was all part of the housing element process. And I mean, it was part of the discussion. How many JDUs can we
Yeah.
submit and get it approved by HCD?
Yeah.
I don't think it's within our scope in this committee to suggest something other than housing sites.
You know, Ronnie, I agree with you, but I want to share something. This is from the Monte Sereno. Okay, so in July of 2022, the city council reduced plan check and building permit fees by 50% for 225 properties. They did this huge outreach to the community where the owner expressed an interest in developing an ADU or an additional dwelling unit. This incentive strategy will continue in the next cycle. Based on the fees for the average ADU building permit, this savings will be about $3,500 to $4,000. This will result in $900,000 in incentives provided by the city. But they did this very strong outreach program. So I completely agree with you that in the time frame that we have, we cannot get 50 JADUs, but we might be able to get, as I keep talking about filler, if let's say Fogarty does 20 to, an acre at 20 to 23 and Christchurch does 15 or something, can we make it up? We don't have any SB9 units in our housing element either. And maybe if we have some, we could do that. But
But
I-
you're
we're-
revisiting, yeah. Well,
I'm exactly. I'm just trying to share this perspective, but I don't think it's realistic because this was done a long time ago by this town.
And at least for me, it's not the time frame question. I think that's outside of the scope of what this committee is started.
Well, let's ask Terrence, and again, not for 50, okay? But if we needed filler, would we be able to, in your opinion, would we be able to add any JADUs or SB9 units to our housing element? Terrence, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. We have to convince HCD that our housing element meets their requirements. So to try to make that shift really reopens the whole question, and it's another negotiation with HCD. HCD wants to see and always wanted to see high density zoning and a single site that was feasible. That's what they're interested in. Now that it's in ink in our document, for us to sort of come at it in a different angle is possible, but they're not just gonna bless it. It's gonna be almost like a whole process starting over again in terms of convincing them that it meets the requirements. And meanwhile, we're subject to penalties.
Okay. And then the magic number for HCD though is 20 to 23 units an acre. So that if we were to go back, and I'm just throwing this out with 2 sites that have slightly over an acre on each or whatever with the 20 to 23, does HCD consider that feasible?
Well, I can't read their minds, but they would be, they may, as long as we had almost 2.5 acres zoned for high density. If we totaled someplace else a total of 2.5 acres in 2 different sites and zoned it the same way, that probably will work. I recognize the frustration. This requirement to have high density housing is really not appropriate for Portola Valley. As you guys have been all talking about, there's other ways to get there with JADUs, with affiliated sites, but the HCD is a one size fits all approach, and they want to see high density zoning. They think that's what equates with affordable housing. And even though I disagree with them, and I think we all have some doubts about that, it is their reading of the policy. Sorry for that, for taking that tangent.
No, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Now, does anybody want to give their vote?
Yeah. Here you go. Sure. I mean, we can try
You want me
it.
to go for it? I go, for 1, I gave it a 5. For 2, I gave it a 1. For 3, I gave it a 5. For 4, I gave it a 1. For 5, I abstained. For 5, 6, and 7, I refused. For 8, I gave it a 1. For 9, I gave it a 4. I think it's a waste of money, time, and energy unless to do 10 unless the open space thing is just fabulous for it. The Blue Oaks, I give it a 4. Christchurch, I give it a 1. Substation, I gave it a 2. Soccer field, I gave it a 3. Hawthorns, I gave it a 1 for 20. Dorothy Ford Park, I gave it a 6.
So I'm sorry, when you say 1 for 20, you changed the number to 20 units
Yeah.
instead of 10 units?
Yeah.
Okay.
And like I say, this is just a snapshot in my mind right now. Actually, I managed to make my iPad work. to fill it in.
You captured some of those on this thing.
What?
Uh,
Oh,
I think
God,
you're-
did you do that?
no. Is-
Oh,
So-
wow. Your
So
Sharpie
it's-
wish.
I think at the top, it was 5, then 1, then 5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
5,
5,
1,
5.
5, and then 1, and then I abstained for the next 3. Refused. And then Skyline for 50, I gave that a 1. Skyline for 10, I gave it a 4.
Wait, sorry, where you're writing 4s right now, I think you're recusing on, which ones were you recusing?
So,
All of
5?
3, 3, 5, 0. I'm refused.
5, 6, 7, right?
5, 6,
Those were,
yeah. Those are big R.
Ronnie, do you have the table that's not a PDF that we could just
oh, yes.
fill out? It might be a lot easier. for-
Although this is very fun.
So Mary, why did you abstain on 9 and 10?
9 and 10, I didn't abstain on 9 and 10.
For abstain?
Oh, wasn't it?
4 is abstain, yeah.
No,
Or you're just so neutral, you can't decide.
oh, no, I'm not abstaining on that. 9 and 10, I thought it was more graded. Why is it? It's not moving.
So the scoring is on the
Ron, is
previous page?
let me see if I can. But wait, let me actually get these first.
Maybe it's more useful to go over one item at a time and have kind of a discussion
Or
on
it's
it. So I don't know if
abstaining.
I'm
Okay,
ready to
sorry.
give numbers.
So I'm concerned. So all of my 3s, all of my 4s are 3.
What are your 3s? She had 1, 3.
Blue Oaks and the 10, the Fogarty's 10 was a 3.
But you originally had a 3 for number 13.
13, I had a 3 for number 13. 3 is real. I have significant.
Okay.
Hawthorne's, I was
Okay.
wearing 1 for 20. That's 14, and then 15, I had 6. And I reserve the right to change my mind.
She's abstained.
I'm recused, R.
Wait, these are different than what?
One, and then I added for 20 vision. You can put it in the comments or whatever.
And the Blue Oak strip, you're a 3?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Could
Better
I
than
share?
David. You didn't love this process? Couldn't start going faster. Oh my God. God, the beauty of it all. I ain't even wooing them with colors.
Oh, what?
You've been wooing the committee with colors.
So much of this depends on the things.
Wowing. Hey, Carla, you ready?
Almost.
Can you check if
So-
I got your?
I think you got one. Except that I changed the whole thing to 20.
I'm put in 10
Oh,
to 20.
wow.
And what about 3350? I think Martin said 25 now rather than 50. Did I misunderstand? I mean, I don't think he's committed to anything. Yeah.
It's not his choice. It's, you know, he would
Yeah.
direct himself.
Yeah,
There's one I
okay.
had a question on. Oh, what about Fogarty for 25 as well? Like if, you know, if there's a combination, anyway, 10, the
Sure,
10 versus
yeah,
50.
we can add
Yeah.
things, what,
Okay.
so further-
No, I know that.
Well, we have about 5 acres of buildable space.
Well,
This is about totally.
yeah.
It is,
Zoning is about totally. Always.
but this is not, well, yeah, but is it about zoning? What do I know?
Okay.
Go for it.
Ronnie?
Ready?
Start on me.
Okay,
3, 1, 2, 2, 5, 5, 5, 1, 5, 3, 1.
but sorry, did I get, what, how many 5s were there? 2 5s?
3,
3, 5.
3 5s.
Oh.
No, he got 'em.
Like this?
Go back up, up. Go up to your 1 on line 8.
Okay,
Okay, that's right. Then 5,
yeah,
3,
okay.
1, 5, 5, 1, 6.
Okay, this is going to be actually really helpful for, I can't take it, we can't use this, or can we? Like, can I take it to MROSD and say where you are? On our rating?
I wanted to make a comment about MRSD because I think, even though I'm gonna have to vote much lower than you. And not because I don't think it's a great idea, but I just don't think it can happen with the conservation easement. And I understand is, yeah, to me, that is, to me, I'm voting on a realistic vote, not an optimistic vote. No, because I didn't come prepared, so I'm not even sure I'm ready to do this. tonight. I know, but I just haven't really.
You're leaving?
Now let's look at the
Witching
rest
hour.
of the,
He did his thing.
all right. Did,
Can we recuse Carter?
you mean excuse him?
Yeah.
Um,
He took his test, he's out, it's timed out.
Carter, what's your overall opinion on the proposal and going to the council before you leave?
I think this is the first draft, and I don't think for anyone there ready to submit to the council.
Okay.
I think that this, while I'm against this kind of voting this early, but you know, as long as we
Well,
see it.
this isn't voting, this is just to get a gauge for,
Well, this is a way to, you know, to start to talk about it.
right.
You know, because then we will get a score. You know, and then we will be able to say, okay, good. And this is to try to objectify or subject the, you know, decision. And from that standpoint, I support it. I don't think that what we do tonight is the kind of stuff that I want to send on to the council for a
Yeah.
recommendation.
You did.
Right.
So you almost went. Sorry, I'm taking the.
You know, there's really not much left if we need to leave. And we'll get the minutes. Yeah. Yep. Okay, thank you. You want to, would you like to vote?
I'll vote. And I just want to state that this is under the understanding that we're trying to find a 50-unit site. So this is not, I'm not saying that I think that the best thing for our town is to do a 50-unit site. I just think that given that we're trying to replace the Ford Field, which has been approved at 50, so this is, that's my caveat for these votes. So for number 6, line 6, I'm going to say 1.
Sorry, line.
Can you
okay,
start
yeah.
with line
It
1?
should-
Well,
she
sorry,
means-
I was
yeah,
looking at the
that-
Excel. Okay, 1. Then,
Well,
then I guess I don't know, then I should say 6, even though I don't quite know how to vote for the next ones.
Yeah.
You can either, you're talking about the rows or then there's the numbers here. Or you could
Okay,
just list
I'll
your
go for
numbers.
2,
Go ahead.
yeah. Is 2 better for you? Who's taking notes?
I am.
2?
It's right there.
Yeah. So then because I'm gonna stick with, we've said 50 sites, 50 units per site, I'm gonna go for 6. I lost the rating. Hold on.
here, why don't you take a look at this sheet?
Okay, well, I'm looking for the
Oh,
rating.
okay.
So then 6.
Sorry, that was the second 6?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
6. 1. No, I'm sorry, I'm gonna do 2 on that one, sorry. 6. 6. For 50, we'll say 2.
Oops. Yep.
6. 6. 6. 6. 2. I'd like this to be 50 units.
Well, that was 10 to 20 on the screen.
Then it's not going to meet my 50 max, but I think we
Oh.
could get 50 on there for sure.
Oh, did you say 15 or 50?
50,
Oh, yeah.
because I think that site is huge.
Yeah.
So-
The historic complex
I
is
mean,
not
which
used.
Well, but the
she talking
Hawthorne
about?
site in
Hawthorne.
general.
Karen and I have served on a committee regarding Hawthorne, so there is some information that without knowing it, there are limitations to that site due to the conservation easement and the ability to make improvements to the site.
One of them is utilities, and so,
No
I
sewer.
spoke to somebody recently that this is all secondhand, that utilities is one of the reasons why nothing has happened there, even with the large building, so.
Okay, then and I have to remind myself this again, because I get so excited about our future selves. This is for right now, so we can scrap that. We can get rid of that 50.
Get rid of this row.
Yeah. And so then I'll say 6. for the 10 to 20 units because that doesn't solve our problem. And 1.
Um, yeah, I can, off the cuff here.
It's hard.
Well, I
Uh,
think if people aren't,
No,
Are you
I,
ready?
I actually feel like Karen is that I wasn't really prepared to vote and I want a little more information. I will vote if people want me to, but I'm not,
We
I-
can bring it back.
I'm just not sure what we're trying to achieve by doing this right now. I don't know, but I also don't want to poo-poo anything, right? So go ahead, Ronnie.
Snapshot of right now.
Okay.
It's not about,
Okay.
you know, she might change her mind when she realizes.
I totally agree with you, but that's not what exercise that we're doing,
We
right?
are.
But I keep hearing from Terrence and that we're replacing, you know, it's that 50 unit high density site is what. So that's what my votes are based on. So
But-
until I know
Yeah,
otherwise,
that's why
that we,
it's the
But,
snapshot.
but what Terrence said is he said if we found 2.5 acres elsewhere at 20 to 23, that would work, that could fly with HCD. He wasn't saying it all was in one site. There could be an acre property here, well, let's say 1.25 acre here and a 1.25 acre somewhere else. That equates to the same thing. I'm just trying to clarify that, yeah.
okay,
That's,
that's helpful. Go ahead, Terrence.
no, I was just to say, that's true. The operative word there is it should work. I don't know that, but
Yeah.
it should.
Yeah. So,
Sorry, I'm
What,
just running through mine.
yeah, then in that case, if we think that having fewer units on a site is feasible for this committee in the 6-month timeframe or whatever it is that we have,
Yep.
then I would change some of my 6s.
Will we let her, are you gonna let her change it, Karen?
Well, these
I
are.
don't think I need to today. I'm just saying.
Preliminary
No, we're not.
votes, and so I think we will, when we have the meeting for the final vote that's going to go to the town council, then we can come prepared and we'll have more information that we can all make a vote. So this is
Right.
just sort of a gauge.
If you want to change anything right now, though, tell me.
or just change it. We just said there's nothing set in stone on this.
Yeah, I think that just for sake of remembering why my scoring was like this, I would just want to put an asterisk there saying that my votes were based on the understanding that we were looking for a 50 unit site.
I love it when these things work.
Thank you.
No, it's almost got, almost taking the test.
Does anyone else want to vote? I have a question. I should have asked this in the beginning. I didn't really understand number 4 and how that's different from number 3.
Well, I agree that, yeah, 3 begs the question, and number 4. If, right. So
Anyway,
Mary might comment how she voted differently on them.
well, I think you might have read it as farm worker churches. If you read it quickly, it's not, it says excluding. And-
So like I voted 5 because I I don't really think that private sites with 10 units are viable for VLI. And that's why I also voted 5 on.
I'll go for 5. You convinced me.
Okay.
Harder.
I mean, I don't know, do you object to them being spelled out separately or?
Yeah, I guess I can't see why private sites with 10 units are viable for very low income. I mean, 10 units is a lot. That's a regular village. 10 units, that's.
Well,
That's
I,
huge.
the other,
You can change your vote.
Again, to 3. No, I can't do 3. I have to do
the other way I look at it,
Okay, I'll
and
go for
maybe,
2, make it a 2.
maybe we don't need that question because it's sort of implied by number 3.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. That's why I said I didn't see the difference between them.
'Cause I don't think we're gonna get 5
5
non-private sites, so it'd have to be sort of subsumed or
Five
the
on
right
that.
word.
And-
Getting tired.
Unless for some reason we had, yeah, it's not going to happen. 5, I was going to say if it's like 5 retailers that put worker housing on their site, but that's not realistic.
For employees on the second floor.
I have a question that is really makes it challenging for me to vote.
I know, but
And that is, if a vote of 2 is, it's the best of the available options at this time versus a 1, an unqualified yes, does the 1 mean it's not necessarily available, but I love it? Whereas 2 is, it's the best of the available.
1 is the best.
But the 2 says best of the available. And so does 1 imply that it's not available?
No,
no.
no.
One is it's
Well-
available and like.
I
you
love it.
Fully support the site.
I'm
It's a great
excited
site.
about it. I just can't
2,
wait. to
yeah,
get-
2, you don't like the site as much, but it's, the best option that you have. I think your suggestion, Karen, was not to read too much into the
Yes,
descriptions and just.
yes. Yes, because I struggle with that in the POG, because I read it too hard, then I struggle with those kind of questions. So
Thank
sort of
you.
thing is 1 is your, really, full support and
And it's a go?
it's a go. 2 is,
I don't
3
really
is,
wanna-
oh, I really don't know, but I'll go along with it. 4 is I can't decide.
There aren't too many goes on this yet.
Well,
Right.
the hard, this is hard.
I mean, no, that's my question is, what is a go on this list?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, at least the way I kind of voted is like, I voted 2 on Fogarty, like, if it sort of pans out, at least, over the next few weeks, then my feeling on it would be 2. Like, if it completely falls apart, then obviously,
Okay, so all of these are if it pans out.
I guess it's a little bit, and maybe like over like a short time frame. I mean, some of
Okay.
them, you might.
Well,
be
yeah,
longer.
it's hard because you have to think if it pans out and will the town council like it and then will HCD like it and what's the
This
process
is
to get there?
your,
I
this
mean,
is
there's
your
just a-
opinion. This is your take. It's the snapshot of your thinking.
Okay, there are some people on the committee that aren't comfortable voting right now, and that is totally okay. May I make a suggestion? If this is Brown Act acceptable, can people get back to Ronnie individually with comments on the proposal or questions? Or does it have to be done in this meeting?
Well, I think we covered that, didn't we? Are we all good with the proposal? I think we covered the
If-
proposal in general, right?
No,
Well,
we
if-
haven't voted.
If you're, like, if people wanted to provide scores and just send them to me or
Oh,
provide
no, I
questions
meant
and-
like ask questions about some of these things and the next time maybe it's revised for clarity. But if we have to comment here
like, I don't think I can have a discussion with you and discussion with someone
Yeah,
else, discussion
yeah.
with someone else, but if you are just providing input and I'm collecting it, kind of like Karen did with the list of sites, just as a way of collecting it to
Thank
put
you for
onto
your
the next agenda,
patience.
I think that would be okay.
Okay.
But you
Or
won't get
people could
answer
also
back.
send those to you.
It has to be a one-way, yeah.
A one-way thing.
So like for my spreadsheet, everybody can provide notes. But I can't respond to your note saying, oh. So if you have, and the same thing with Ronnie, but we can't like make that a Google Doc that you can go in and put your numbers and we can all find out what our numbers are during the next 2 weeks, so we can, that would be.
Um, okay, I don't know. Nona, where are you at with this? Because you've been,
It's getting late. And I guess the question is, I mean, I put down some numbers, but I'm not even sure what they mean at this point. So I'm not opposed to doing this, but I think more would come of it if we return to it at the next meeting.
Yeah, that's all.
okay.
I agree.
I'm in that camp as well, which is I can play with the numbers, but I feel like they could change significantly with more information. So I think we have to ask. No, we already asked for public comment on that. Excuse me. Okay. Any other comments about the proposal? We can go back to Ronnie with input and just not expect anything back, but he might be able to change because obviously there's things that have changed regarding the sites, given updates that we have and all, and that, right? With some of them, there might be additions to the site piece and people may have questions about the evaluation. And I have some comments on the criteria, the evaluation criteria, which I'll just set, is that to you, Karen, or to Ronnie? Well, let me just tell you what I was thinking. I'd mentioned this last week, but one bucket of criteria could be what I'm calling HCD suitability. And we talked about this, which is, obviously property owner interest, which, and 20 to 23 units an acre, which we sort of have in here, but there's other things that can happen as well. And one is this building to land value ratio and a number of things. And that's why I was going through different housing elements, trying to find all of the justifications that other communities would have used. But anyway, so something about HCD suitability. And then I didn't know if we wanted to have like type of housing. What we don't have in here is anything related to church or farm workers or renting versus having equity, if that's potential. So those were some other factors that might come into play when we're evaluating something.
I'm comfortable with those.
And do we have in here town ownership versus private ownership?
Yes, I think
It says town-driven project.
I guess, so far it seems like the way we're using these is just maybe in the back of our minds as we
Yeah.
kind of create those votes. Are you thinking of any other way of using them or?
No, but I'm wondering if they need, if we have this, our list, if they need to be added to the list to be complete.
Yeah, for the future people that do this
Yeah.
next time around. too.
I'd like to add two more as well. I think that it helps to say what the benefits are, not just the impacts. So local workers living locally, let's say, or economic diversity or age diversity, just benefits somewhere. And one of those, I guess, in addition to those others, is preserving future options for the towns. If the town commits town-owned land now, then it's not available as the town grows.
With that, I mean, community resource impact, removing open space, removing recreational fields.
Well, it's future options writ large, yeah.
Karen, you had just the bucket of HCD suitability and that I can look at.
Well, I think, you know, unfortunately, there isn't a list that HCD provides, so you have to look at the justification within each.
Right.
So, but at the top of the list are developer or owner, property owner interest. Densities that allow, which is the 20 to 23, is at the top of the list.
Property owner interest is.
Yeah, but there's some, there's building to land value. I'm going to try to put together a memo that I can share with all of you on this. And then we can have it be in the next meeting as a document.
To make this a little, okay, that might be
Yeah.
easier, then we can just.
Yeah.
get at it. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
We'll do that.
I don't think there's gonna be any disagreement on these things, and
Okay.
instead of making it Brown Act complicated.
All right. Let's, are we ready to move on? So let's go to, 4C is formation of subcommittees if necessary. I don't think we need to do that at this meeting. Any comments on that? And
Remember where we started that?
well, at one point we were talking about, did we need like a financing group? And we just thought I put it in here as a placeholder just in case there was something. We talked about, or any next steps. We know that we have to do some outreach and an analysis. Is there anything else that comes to mind for folks? Okay. Committee reports. I didn't get this suitability thing out yet. Staff reports. Terrence, can you speak at all to our RENA status to date and where we might be with certain types of housing?
I don't have that data. We're starting to assemble it for an update, but we don't have that data right now.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, I did put in the corrected rental limits that I got off of a site that was wrong. So that's in there. And there was the email from Sarah that she wanted to make public. So we put that in the packet. Our next, I guess, excuse me, are there any public comments? Christy Corley.
Yeah, I think it's important to define bonus density law because this vote is based on 50 units, but if you have zoning above 20 and you go out for an RFP, that RFP can be drawn up with bonus density law. Can you please describe or make sure that this group understands the new laws for January? And actually the housing laws in your vote become very important, and bonus density law understanding becomes very important. And the public needs to understand that it's not going to be 50 in the end. A 50 unit site would turn into 75 plus. So we have to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Is there anybody else? Let's see. No. Okay, that's it for public comments. So our next meeting is Tuesday, January 21st at 5 p.m. And then after that, we'll meet on Monday, February 3rd at 5:30. And we'll figure out the meeting times from there.
The
Oh,
next one
I'm
is the-
sorry. So the next meeting, our next meeting, because Monday, we can't move to, that's Martin Luther King Day. So we're going to be a Tuesday, January 21st at 5 PM. Although we can change that to 5:30 if that's helpful. Because Parks and Rec doesn't have a meeting on the 21st now. Is that helpful for you?
I mean, if you want me to be on time.
Yes, so let's change this
If
to,
not,
I'm
I don't
sorry.
mind being. late.
Let's change it to 5:30.
5:15. I could, 5:15. Is that better? Then we can get home earlier. 5:30, great, 5:30.
What, okay. And then we'll do February 3rd at 5:30, and that's a Monday. Okay? Thank you, everybody. Sorry for the long meeting, but we're covering a lot of stuff. We're getting there. Meeting is adjourned at 8:40 PM. Ouch.